guys, Comic Boom here on behalf of both myself and Jace of the Comic Source podcast. Jace is presently, unfortunately, he's working at the moment. He's got other duties. He may be joining us later. He may not. It depends. Work pending. So for this week of January 24th, 2023, we got approximately 14 comics to review. Jace may or may not be joining us, but every now and then that happens where Jace will be doing it by himself or I'll be doing it by myself, simply because it's just the way it is. You know, we have lives outside of reviewing these comic books, and sometimes other things take precedent. So having said that, this is quite an interesting week. We got the premiere issue of Action Comics 1051. And we have the continuing story of Lazarus Planet. We once were gods, and I was really looking forward to reading The Human Target. And we've got another chapter of Batman One Bad Day. And so overall, I thought this week was, again, the vast majority of the comics this week I personally found to be a little bit underwhelming. So again, there's only really about 3 or 4 that I liked. One of them being Justice Society of America again. I don't mind Action Comics 1051. I'm always loving Human Target because I love the story Tom King's telling in conjunction with Greg Smallwood's amazing art. But there's definitely some disappointments, the least of which is Lazarus Planet. And, some of the other ones, which I'll get to. So, again, Jace might be joining us, but without further ado, let's hop right into the first one that we're going to be reviewing. And that is Batman One Bad Day, Catwoman #1, written by J. Willow Wilson. And some beautiful, beautiful cover here. I'm going to screen share here. Beautiful covers for for all the Batman One Bad Day. It looks as if DC's likely going to be collecting all of them in a slipcase edition, and they're even given all of these One Bad Day issues. They're actually making them all individual hardcovers, which I think is very curious. I question whether or not the stories are of a quality that requires that degree of prestige hardcover format. Although I really do love Tom King's One Bad Day, but you know, I mean, I might be in the minority on that because that was a sort of a divisive story. None of these One Bad Day stories have really been perceived, I think. None of them have been widely critically acclaimed, quite frankly. Even though I really enjoyed Tom King's One Bad Day. I'm just talking anecdotally. I might be in the minority on that, but I really enjoyed it. And I like the Penguin One Bad Day story. And I actually don't mind this Catwoman One Bad Day story, even though it doesn't really follow the narrative. The One Bad Day storyline is sort of loosely based on a Killing Joke, that famous story of Alan Moore. The idea being that, you know, it ends arguably with the Joker being killed by the Batman, but it's sort of left up in the air. But it's the worst day that the Joker may have had, and maybe arguably one of the worst days Batman has, in conjunction with the individual villains. And none of the stories have consistently lined up necessarily with that theme, so I'm not really sure. In particular, this one, Batman One Bad Day, Catwoman #1. I'm not really sure how this is Catwoman's One Bad Day, but I actually don't mind the story by J. Willow Wilson. J. Willow Wilson has been sort of hit and miss with me. Her Wonder Woman was a little bit disappointing, but was substantially better than Wonder Woman the way Wonder Woman's written now. And I'm hoping J. Willow Wilson's influence on Wonder Woman in the ongoing Wonder Woman series, she's going to be contributing her scripting talents along with the Clunrads who need the help, frankly, with respect to Wonder Woman, Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods. So J. Willow Wilson will be lending her scripting abilities there. J. Willow Wilson here scripts an interesting tale for Catwoman. I want to give a shout out to Brian Boland's amazing variant cover. I think this is a 1:25 ratio. It looks amazing. It shows, for those listening, it's Brian Boland's unique artistic style of Catwoman looking absolutely gorgeous with the big cat-like nails hanging on to Batman's cowl and cape, and looking pretty sexy with black lipstick on, smiling devilishly, looking toward the reader. Looks absolutely amazing. I wish it wasn't a 1:25 ratio because that means it's going to be too expensive for me to buy. My particular philosophy with comic books is that I don't I don't spend more than cover price for a cover. I'm not going to spend $25 for a cover or $50 for a cover. I would rather buy another 2 or 3 or 4 comic books because that's just the way I am, because I personally read them. I like to read comic books. If I want art, I can buy a cover. I can buy a book filled with covers or images, or I can download an image and stare at it like I'm doing right now. So in any event, the story itself of Batman One Bad Day Catwoman, again scripted by J. Willow Wilson. Jamie McKelvey does the art and colors. Clayton Cowles on the lettering, and Jamie McKelvey on the cover. This is an interesting story insofar as, well, let me back up here. Is it really an interesting story? It's called No Small Scores. And essentially the story can be encapsulated like this. It shows a flashback sequence where Selina Kyle's mother, Selina, and Selina's sister Maggie, when they were young, their mother went to a pawn shop, and her mother was desperate for rent money, and her mother took a piece of jewelry to a pawn shop and basically pawned it off because her mother told her it was valuable, but the guy at the pawn shop only gave her $200, which was barely enough to cover rent for this item of jewelry, which is a 14 karat gold setting, jade and tourmaline. 3 stones are nice, but this ain't a Carnot. The setting's all wrong, and so this guy at the pawn shop, you're not sure if he's ripping Selina Kyle's mother off, but this is when Selina and her sister Maggie were very young, and you get the sense that maybe Selina Kyle's mother is being ripped off with this expensive item of jewelry. Flash forward to the future, and an older Selina Kyle is at a museum, and she's checking out the museum where this item of jewelry is going for sale. Of course, a couple of decades later. And of course, Selina Kyle wants to steal this trinket, this item of jewelry, for herself, because in her mind, she's taking it back because she feels her mother was ripped off. And it's Selina Kyle, and this is where J. Willow Wilson, I think succeeds in the heart and soul of this story. It's a story about Selina putting a lot of stock and feeling and emotion tied up in an item, in a trinket of jewelry. And for Selina Kyle, it was important for her to steal this jewelry back almost as a sort of a desperate, sort of emotional way of getting back her childhood, of redeeming a wrong that was done to her mother, that basically it was essentially stolen by this pawn shop guy by underpaying for it. She's stealing it back almost as a way of sort of like desperately trying to right a wrong that occurred in Selina's past. And in the process of casing the museum, I guess, she comes across this one of the what she believes to be a worker at the museum, who ends up being a villain by the name of the Forger, who is a lot like Catwoman, but is an older Catwoman, sort of an older lady with gray pink hair and a pink suit, and she's like Selina, but she's just older. She's not a killer. She's just a thief, and she goes by the name of the Forger. And she does exactly what her name suggests. She forges documents. That's what she forges items, and she basically sells them off into the black market. And that's what this Forger does. And my apologies. I'm going to be drinking as I talk this. One of the disadvantages of Chase being gone is I have to do all the talking. But in any event, this is this particular, as with all the One Bad Day stories, this is essentially 70 pages long, or maybe 68, 69 pages long, and frankly, this is more of this story. Not a lot happens. There's not a lot of violence here. This is just basically of Selina stealing an item of. She attempts to steal this item, this jewel or this item of jewelry, this butterfly jewelry or whatever the hell it is. I wish they had a better name for it here. They don't really give it a specific name, I think. But it's just some jewelry or trinket. And it ends up that the Forger already stole it and replaced it with a forgery. So she ends up with a conflict with this Forger. And then she runs into Batman. And then Batman is polite enough to sort of say, is to warn Selina and say, Selina, by the way, this Forger person is, you should be careful. She's She knows what she's doing. She's very experienced, and Batman doesn't. He stays out of Catwoman's way. This is once again. There seems to be a new Bible at DC regarding the writing of Batman. This Batman is the type of Batman, he lets Selina do whatever she wants. He's not going to step on her toes, even though she's committing a theft. It's okay if you steal, Selina, but somebody else like the Forger, no, I got to take them down. But don't worry, Selina, because I'm sleeping with you, you can do whatever you want. There's a strong sense of that here. And this is one of the ways that, I understand that there's always that sexual tension and interplay between Batman and Selina. But the way that Batman sort of like he's stepping aside because he's going to let Selina confront this Forger. I mean, Batman has done all this research. He wants Selina not to confront the Forger because he's putting together a case so that Forger can actually do time and be sent to jail. Now, frankly, Batman should be doing that to Catwoman all the time, but that hypocrisy, okay, we're going to let that go as readers because we love the Bat-Cat scenario. That's all well and good. But Batman, once again, let's Selina Kyle get away with just straight up crime here, and for no other reason than it's just pure sex. That's really what this is. They're in love, he's in love, and so she gets a free pass because of sex, because of love, and of course, I suppose that possesses a high degree of verisimilitude because let's face it, we're all hypocrites when it comes to doing the right thing versus sleeping with women, men, whatever floats your boat, right? That's just the way it is. And Batman is an absolute hypocrite, and Catwoman certainly is. And besides, Catwoman's got Batman wrapped around her finger. In any event, this basically concludes the Forger gets away. She defeats Catwoman somewhat handily. She seems to be a superior hand-to-hand combatant, despite being an older lady. And she's actually quite adept. And she headbutts Catwoman because Catwoman underestimates her despite being warned by Batman. Batman steps into the scene at the end, says, I told you, and of course Catwoman gets a black eye. And earlier in the story, Selina calls her sister Maggie and said, Maggie, guess what? Remember that item of jewelry that Mom pawned back in the day and couldn't afford rent and blah, 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 blah. Maggie says, yeah, what of it? And she tells Maggie that she's going to steal it. And Maggie doesn't care. And Maggie is actually kind of upset saying, why are you doing this? Like, it's a piece of jewelry. Why? How does it help our lives now getting it back? What's the purpose of that? And basically the moral of this story is nothing has any value and nothing has any value but for the value that you give it. So it was Selina that in her mind gave this trinket, gave this particular item of jewelry. She gave it so much significance herself, and yet it didn't. It's just a trinket of jewelry, and yet it meant something to Selina. Yet incredibly enough, ironically enough, it didn't mean anything to Maggie, because for Maggie, the important thing was her memories of her mother and maybe other things which aren't really elaborated upon. But writer J. Willow Wilson allows the reader to sort of maybe fill in those blanks. And the lesson is quite clear. And the reason why this story impacted me a little bit is my dad died about a year and a half ago. And ironically enough, significantly enough, we reached a point where myself and my two siblings, we sat down, we were dividing my dad's jewelry, and we did that. And it was very interesting that the items of personal adornment that my dad had, watch, ring, watch, et cetera, I put more value on some things, and my brother put a value on something else, and my sister put a value on something else. And I kid you not, we all had our heart set on something different, and it worked out just wonderfully. And it just goes to show you that nothing has any value but the value that you give it. And that's really what the lesson of this story is here. And in that respect, it worked. Did it drag on? Yes. Do I think it needed to be 70 pages or 60 some odd pages? I think it did drag on. But this is a good story. It is a good self-contained story. We have a new character. I believe this character is new, the Forger. Expect to see her again. She's an older Catwoman-like character. And I think J. Willow Wilson did a good job here. There was some decent character work, good character work between Selina and Batman. I think Batman is a little bit emasculated. He's been emasculated more than once. They're lightening up Batman. They're making him more of a family man. They're making him more sort of a tool of Selina from time to time. He gives in quite a bit more for sex and the sexual politics in the relationship between men and women. So in that respect, maybe it's more of a realistic Batman, but this isn't a dark, grim, and dirty Batman, or grim and dirty. He's dirty, but he's not grim and gritty anymore. He's a little bit emasculated, and he's a little bit more easygoing about what Selina can get away with. A lot like a lot of us guys who want to stay married and happy. Hey, happy life, happy wife, happy life. Yeah, you nod your head. If your wife wants something, you just nod your head. A girl you love wants something, you just nod her head and let her get away with it. That's what happens here. But in any event, not a bad story. Again, mileage will vary. I'm really curious to know what you guys might think about this story. I think I actually enjoy this more. It's one of the better ones of the One Bad Day. So far, I've enjoyed. My personal favorites are the Tom King Riddler story, which is my favorite. And the Riddler story I didn't mind. And this one as well, I don't mind as well. I like when it has a little bit of a theme and a moral to it, and that's what this has. And so it's not bad. Now, the next issue that we are going to review is Tim Drake Robin. Now, this is I want to. Jace isn't here to review this. I'm almost tempted to put it near the end, but in fairness, I know that Jace has been more kind to Tim Drake Robin, and so I will try to articulate. I know his view of Tim Drake Robin is that he likes the approach that Fitzmartin has taken with respect to Tim Drake, and in terms of Tim Drake trying to find himself by feeling a little bit lost. So he lives out by the marina, and he's exploring his relationship with Bernard, having recently come to terms with his bisexuality. He's got, he's in love with Bernard, but Bernard doesn't know that he's really Robin, and so in this issue, it comes to a hilt. Now, I'm still not a fan of this series, and I don't like the direction it's taken. But I want to at least make some token attempt to be objective about what this story has done. And what Megan Fitzmartin has done here is that she actually has Tim Drake in this particular issue state point blank that he's frustrated and that he's questioning whether he tells Nightwing at what point at the beginning of this story. He tells Nightwing because they're looking for Bernard, and they're looking for this villain who ultimately ends up being named, the villain's name is Moriarty, and they're looking for Bernard, and Tim is so frustrated saying, what am I doing thinking I could just be a civilian as well? What am I doing thinking I shouldn't have moved to the marina being a civilian, got a boyfriend, and now he doesn't even know that I'm really Robin, and I feel like I'm deceiving him, and now he's been kidnapped and his life is in danger from this person, and I can't put the clues together to solve this mystery. And he's very, very, very frustrated, to say the very least. And what ends up happening is, as Tim and Nightwing they're looking for Bernard, and oddly enough, Bernard is he's found ultimately by Sparrow, because Tim Drake has a sidekick now named Sparrow. Tim Drake is found actually by the marina. So apparently Tim Drake claims that he looked over all of Gotham. Tim Drake can't believe that he actually apparently jumped from building to building all over Gotham twice and couldn't find Bernard, as if somehow this is supposed to be shocking. Like, hopping from building to building, swinging from building to building, Tim, and you're surprised that you can't find Bernard. I mean, literally, Bernard, he could hide from you for 5 years. You'd never be able to find him. I don't know why and he literally has no clues to go on. But in any event, I've had a hard time from the beginning of this series sort of trying to make sense of exactly what's been going on. I don't really understand what all these clues are, but apparently this individual has been this bad guy behind the scenes, who we find out at the end of the issue is Moriarty, has basically created these discs that somehow create constructs, which is revealed in this issue to be made out of salt. And these constructs are, at one point, Tim at some point in this issue finds out that as he's fighting these constructs, he sees various symbols appear. And one of these symbols means phosphorus, and the other symbol means salt. And because of that, he in the battle with this, he hallucinates, and he sees what these constructs want him to see, and these constructs are apparently made out of salt. And so he figures that the best way to deal with these constructs made out of salt is to dump acid on it, because acid dissolves salt, which I didn't think, apparently Tim Drake is not particularly intelligent, because water also dissolves salt. You can pour water on salt. I mean, you could have I can prove this. You can take a salt statue and pour water on it, and it will dissolve. But albeit, acid would be better. And so, if you can believe this, this is where this gets absurd. He looks for anything with salt. So Tim is fighting this person. Batwoman tells him it can't be Clayface. So this person is apparently, it's not made out of clay. This person's something else. But this person is throwing a bunch of hallucinations or real life constructs at him made out of salt that are created through this white floating discs. I don't understand it. And he dumps a barrel of acid on him, and then he looks for apples and oranges, anything with salt. I'm not making this stuff up. And then he goes to his boat on the marina, takes out the battery that powers the boat and the engine, and he dumps the battery acid on one of the elephant creatures made out of salt. And then he's at wit's end, and what does he do? He decides that the best way because he's being attacked by this giant fish made out of salt. Again, I'm not making this up. And what does he do? He decides to puke on this fish. I'm not making this up. Guys, this has got to be the first time ever in any battle where I've seen a superhero defeat the villain by puking on them. That's what Tim Drake does. He forces himself, he shoves 2 fingers into his mouth, and he forces himself to puke all over this flying salt fish that comes toward him, and it dissolves the fish. I'm not making this up. This is, when I read this, it was absolutely laughable. And then he says, his first words after he pukes all over this fish, defeating his enemy, he actually says to the villain, who ends up being Moriarty, saying, "You're no match for me. I may not have been raised by Batman, but I was trained by him." So suggesting that apparently Batman trained Tim Drake how to puke all over a bad guy. I'm not kidding you. And then he exclaims, "Where is Bernard?" He demands to know where Bernard is. And of course, I mean, what else do you say after you puke all over the bad guy, right? Or the fish. And then this bad guy appears, says, "I am your match in every way, for I am Moriarty," and that's how it ends. And so, I got to tell you, I was actually laughing as I read this before, but it's comical. Now, I don't know if it's intended to be as funny as it actually comes across. I really did find this to be a very funny comic, because it was almost, frankly, a little bit absurd, but it is what it is. Now, having said that, some benefits. I didn't mind Riley Rosmo's art. I think it actually, I could figure out what was going on. I thought it was comical. I'm assuming it's Riley Rosmo's art. Maybe I should just double check that. I got to, is it? Yes, Riley Rosmo did the art on pages 1 to 5 and page 22, and Ricardo Lopez Ortiz does the art on pages 6 to 21 and the cover. So there's a combination of both, but I think Ortiz does a good job sort of melding his artistic sensibilities with Rosmo. So there's some artistic consistency here, and I thought it was entertaining enough, and I understood what was going on enough to laugh and get a kick out of it. I still think this is a really this villain, this Moriarty, the detective work involved here is, I don't know how connecting these dots makes any kind of sense at all. It's absolute nonsense how all this stuff is connected. I mean, I still, for the life of me, I don't understand how Moriarty created literally flying white discs that had symbols of the salt and symbols of phosphorus, and then also combine that with stories and books, and it was all over the place. It didn't work for me. It still doesn't work for me. And the Tim Drake's really his guilt and angst over not being able to find Bernard, or ultimately Bernard is actually found, and Bernard looks like a girl. He looks like a girl with short hair, and that's really weird. But I guess Tim Drake's bisexual, and he's got a boyfriend that, I guess, apparently, at least in this instance, draws and looks exactly like a girl a little bit, or at a minimum, gender neutral. But I guess that's comic books in the present day, and it's all good. I just, that's the character work here, and there is some character work insofar. If you've been following it so long, and I know Jace is going to have an interview coming up with Megan Fitzmartin, and she has been trying to develop that, focusing on the fact that Tim Drake is trying to find himself, basically. And I guess apparently the best way to find himself is to move to the mirror, not go to college, not complete college, instead quit, go live in a marina, explore your sexuality, live on a boat, date a guy named Bernard, and not tell him who you are, and just literally help a bunch of people and fly around. And, he's very upset. At one point in this story, Tim Drake gets upset because he made his own costume and it doesn't fit. So he complains to Nightwing. I mean, this is what Tim Drake has become. I mean, you might not have been raised by Batman, but is that really a bad thing? I mean, you actually had parents. You're supposed to be the most well-adjusted, and here you are, you're not. But again, the response to that is, well, he's struggling. He's young. He's making mistakes, and that's the central gist of this story. So you're either with that or you're not. You guys can let me know how you feel about it in the comments below. And I know Jace would be more will defend this story better than I have, since it's not my cup of tea. So in any event, continuing on now, the next comic that we're going to review is Sergeant Rock versus the Army of the Dead, issue 5 of 6. And this is the one that it's got Adolf Hitler on the cover. Yes, Adolf Hitler on the cover, and this is fantastic primary cover. I think drawn by I believe that's Gary Frank on the cover. The interiors are done by Eduardo Rizzo, and colors by Christian Rossi. And the variant cover done by Francisco Francavilla, which I absolutely love. I'm actually getting all the Francavilla covers because I just love them. It looks amazing. Quite frankly, I think Francavilla's art on the covers is a better reflection of the actual interior by Edward Rizzo. And this chapter is called Wanted, Hitler, Dead or Alive. Bruce Campbell's the writer. This is more of the same. I just want to say one thing about this. Everyone that I know who's been reading this has basically been getting a lot of fun out of it. But because it is just a bunch of dead zombie Nazis, and including Hitler himself is essentially sort of an undead Nazi here, and he's commanding the undead, and basically it's Sergeant Rock and Easy Company. It's their job to simply break into headquarters where Hitler is and basically kill Hitler. And that's really what this is. We know this is going to be 6 long issues. We're in issue 5 right now, and this is just a long protracted World War II adventure of essentially landing in Berlin and taking out Adolf Hitler. And I got to tell you, I used to read a lot of Sergeant Rock stories. I got a lot of Sergeant Rock comics. I love it. I got some of the old collected editions. And I'm quite accustomed to reading Sergeant Rock stories with the art of Joe Kubert. And so seeing Edward Rizzo drawing Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, it's just a joy, because he really is good at drawing the visceral, violent aspects of World War II. And as I said, is a pretty good reflection of Francisco Francavilla's art on the variant covers. And, I got to say that this is one of those stories that probably could have been told in 1 issue or 2 issues. Because all this is it's just Sergeant Rock and Easy Company going and killing a bunch of dead zombies for literally 4 or 5 issues now. And now we're at the 5th issue, and it's more of the same, except in this issue, they finally get to Adolf Hitler, and, Hitler's secretary attacks him, he's undead, and they stab Hitler through the mouth. That's kind of really it. There is no real big battle with Hitler here. Well, no, I should say that. I mean, I guess there is, but when Hitler is stabbed in the mouth, that should have been a full-page spread. of Hitler being stabbed literally from through both cheeks with a big knife by, I think it's by Bulldozer there. And I would have liked to have seen that. So I was actually a little bit disappointed in that. And this is kind of more of the same. So this does feel like a decompressed story to me. I don't mind it. This is going to sell well as a trade because it's Bruce Campbell's having a lot of fun here, and it shows. I just want to be clear here that this is not above being criticized as a story, because there's a lot of decompression here. And I think that there could be more character work of the individual soldiers for Sergeant Rock of Easy Company, because there's more action than there is character work, and there should be more character work because you've got plenty of time to do that over 6 issues. But instead, we just get a lot of blood and guts, and that's all well and good. I don't mind that. I love, I mean, it is Sergeant Rock versus the Army of the Dead after all. But I mean, it is possible to have the best of both worlds. I would just suggest that what we're getting more of in this particular world is just plain action and zombies fighting Sergeant Rock of Easy Company, which I love. But if you go into this, just remember that this is basically just one long action sequence of Sergeant Rock battling the undead. And after a while, by the 5th issue, it kind of gets a little bit tiresome. I would like to have had a little bit more sophistication in the plot, other than just the occasional conversation where Sergeant Rock and Easy Company are being given more sophisticated weapons to fight the undead, which they don't need anyway, because all they really need is knives and bullets anyway, which will do the job. But in any event, it's not bad. And I've been with it so far, and I love the Frankavilla covers, and Gary Frank's covers are fantastic too. Colors by Anderson, good stuff overall. And if you're with it this far, you're going to be continuing with it. Okay. So next one is Harley Quinn number 26. So, wow, this Harley Quinn number 26 continues the story of the Harley Quinn who laughs, the Harley Quinn who laughs. Just what we all wanted was the Harley Quinn who laughs, right? So essentially in this issue, it continues off from last issue, obviously. And we get 2 fantastic actually 3 covers. All of them are great. Cover A is really good, and cover B, I'm trying to look at the names here. Unfortunately, they really have to start crediting these artists with their names printed out in each of the pages in my mind. But there's some really gorgeous alternate covers, which I'm showing, but those of you listening on the podcast won't see it. But there's one with Harley Quinn it's my favorite. It's the one where she's killed 2 mimes and she's bowing to the crowd, and it looks amazing. It's got a different letterhead for Harley Quinn, a different logo for Harley Quinn. There's also an amazing Jenny Frison cover with Harley Quinn bathing herself in a bathtub with pink bubbles and a rubber ducky, a bright yellow rubber ducky, and she's kissing. She's blowing a kiss to a rubber ducky. Very sexy and provocative. Really gorgeous stuff. The story picks up from last issue where Harley Quinn and old lady Harley, they come up with a plan. They have to stop the Harley who laughs, and the Harley who laughs has a master plan to basically kill all of the Harley Quinns from all the multiverse that have shown up, and they're showing up in Earth Zero. And Harley Quinn and the old lady Harley, they come up with a plan with the help of Batwoman, Kevin, to basically their master plan is to say, well, wait a minute, why don't we kidnap all the Harleys that are here? And since we know the Harley who laughs wants to kill all the Harleys, if we kidnap and incapacitate all the Harleys, we can set a trap and attract the Harley Quinn who laughs. That's exactly what they do. And the issue itself is literally with mostly dialogue, which quite frankly, it's not bad, but it kind of drags on a bit. But there are some good moments between, there are some interesting moments and some humorous moments between Batwoman and Harley where, at some point, one of the Harleys puts a sticky note on the back of Batwoman that says, "Hit me with a mallet." And, ha ha ha, there's some, I guess you could say maybe small attempts at humor there that will either work for you or they won't, whatever floats your boat. And Kevin himself, sort of like the sidekick of Harley, he sort of straightens out Harley. Harley gets very frustrated. She kind of wants to avoid her responsibility. And Kevin says, no, look, man, you got to, I know you've been through a lot, but it's your responsibility to stop this doppelganger of yourself from the dark universe. You got to do this. And meanwhile, she's dealing with Zaz and then Solomon Grundy and Killer Frost are there to help out, along with Batwoman and the old lady Harley and Kevin himself. And they all manage to round up the Harleys. And there's various action sequences where they're taking out all these Harleys. And at the end, it ends up that the Harley Quinn who laughs shows up that with an ace up her sleeve, and that ace is Poison Ivy. One of these scenes in this issue is Ivy gets a lot of help, but the one person that she really wants help from is Poison Ivy, is Pamela Isley, because she misses her girlfriend. And Ivy does show up at the end of the issue, but as a prisoner and as a captive of the Harley who laughs. So now that arguably the playing field is leveled. Yes, Harley and her comrades have all these other Harleys rounded up, but the Harley Quinn who laughs has Poison Ivy as a prisoner, and so it's a good cliffhanger. It's a good cliffhanger. I think one of the better issues in the last few months. Quite frankly, I enjoyed it, and so it's nice to see. I'm not a big fan of the Dark Universe. I don't like the fact that we had the Harley Quinn who laughs here, just like I wasn't a fan of seeing Miss Murder in the 1 Minute War for Flash, but. I have Flash. I have faith in Jeremy Adams, and Stephanie Williams has done. I think that her Harley Quinn has been better. I've enjoyed the last few issues now, particularly with the change in art as well, and so I've been enjoying it. And this has been, this was a better issue than normal. So now, having said that, the next issue is the Dead Boy Detectives. All right. Now, the Good Boy Detectives, they consist of two young boys by the name of Charlie Goodwin and his friend Edwin. And they're from England, and they died, I think they died in the early 20th century, and they've been dead for a long time. And basically they go around and they, exactly like the name says, they basically solve crimes which invariably involve, not surprisingly, the supernatural. Now, the story so far is that the Dead Boy Detectives they're basically in Los Angeles, and they stumble upon other dead children or other ghosts. And the other children consists of children named, one of the children's name is Jay, another one is Melvin and Tanya. And they're basically hunting for an amulet that that one of the dead children, who is now a ghost, they're looking for this amulet that used to belong to Tanya's parents, and this amulet can apparently summon the spirit that is going around killing them. And last issue, one of their leaders, their teacher, a person by the name of Dom, he was killed by this spirit. Meanwhile, so these children, it's very important to Charlie and Edwin and Jay, Melvin and Tanya, for them to find this amulet and basically, call forth this spirit and to stop this spirit. Now, there's a number of problems that are arising here. And to the credit of, I want to I should say the writers here, the writer, my God, I'm going to butcher his name here. Unfortunately, I'm trying to find, here it is, Pornsak Pishitshot, Pornsak Pishitshot, and is the writer, and I'm just going to call him Pornsak, and Jeff Stokely. I can't believe I feel like I'm insulting the person, and I'm actually pronouncing their name correctly. Pornsak, that's his first name. Pornsak, you're the writer. Jeff Stokely is the artist. Craig Taillefer on the inks. Miguel Mirto on the colors. and Hassan Otsmain Elhau on the lettering. While Pornsack here scripts some decent characterization of the characters Charlie and Edwin, they end up, a love triangle starts to develop here because they both have a crush on the girl Tanya. Now, here's the problem is that Tanya is dead. Tanya died in the 90s, so she's a 90s goth girl. So she wears, she's got the dark eyebrows, the dark makeup, and she's dressed in black all the time, and the black nylons and, under her shirt and her leg stockings, the whole 9 yards. And there, unfortunately, all these children who are dead in LA, so they're like, it's not just the dead boys that are dead and being the detectives. There's these other dead kids, Jay, Melvin, and Tanya, are also dead too, helping them do this detective work. Well, as Edwin, Charlie has a crush on Tanya, but he doesn't really want to say anything. Meanwhile, Edwin and Tanya actually share a moment together as they're trying to piece together exactly how to find this spirit and deal with the mystery as to what's going on with all the undead and why is this person going around killing people, or why is this spirit doing that? And meanwhile, we have these sort of undead little baby creatures going around that ultimately at the end of the issue end up confronting and attacking Charlie and Edwin at the end. And what's interesting about that is that because all these children are ghosts, because Charlie and Edwin, Jay, Melvin, and Tanya are dead, they're not supposed to be able to physically touch each other. But there's a moment between Charlie and between Edwin and Tanya where they actually realize that they can physically touch, and they're not really sure why. Is it because maybe they have feelings for each other, or is there a way that feelings or love can transcend death, etc.? I don't know. I'm sure writer Pornsack has some sort of reason for that, but it's clear that, the dead boy detectives, Charlie and Edwin, they care about each other. And, at one point, Charlie says to Edwin, Edwin, have you really never had any feelings for any girl you've ever met, not even once? Like Charlie's trying to explain to Edwin, not realizing that Edwin's already sort of had a little bit of a quiet moment with Tanya. Not an intimate one or nothing like that. They were just holding each other, consoling each other. But Charlie doesn't realize that maybe Edwin's gotten to first base ahead of him. And so that's a character work that's probably going to play out in future issues. In the meantime, the story is building, and Pornsack does a good job of creating this. There's something called a ghost walk where they can travel great distances around the world. The dead boys, Charlie and Edwin, can actually ghost walk where they can travel over great distances in a much shorter period of time by walking along the ghost road. They can go on ghost roads, where people the ghosts are trapped on the road itself, and the past spirits that want something from you will speak to you as you walk on the ghost road. But the ghost road, if you just ignore the spirits and go about your way, you can get to your destination real quick. So there's some different concepts that are playing with here. But overall, not bad character work. Just Oakley on the art. Pretty good job. I enjoy this. I've collected Dead Boy Detectives. I haven't read a lot. Pardon me. What I mean to say is I've read enough Dead Boy Detectives that I enjoy this. This is in keeping with the mythology of the Dead Boys. There isn't that many Dead Boy detective comics to begin with, but this one is this is a nice addition to the Sandman universe. Very well done. I think I'm enjoying it. Now, the next issue that we're talking about is Catwoman issue 51. All right, this is written by Tini Howard, with art by Sam Besri and colors by Cifuentes. And we know that Catwoman, or Selina Kyle, is in prison. And we know that Iko Hasagawa and Dario, who is as Tomcat, are basically taking over the Catwoman and Tomcat duties for Gotham City, for that area of Gotham City where Selina normally patrols. But Selina needs some protection, or rather, she needs to set herself up in prison. And in order for her to do that, she needs to. Selina's been to prison before, and just a little bit of background here. Selina Kyle is in prison because she killed what's the guy's name? She killed her lover who was trying to kill Batman. Any event, she got all depressed and decided she'd go to prison. Doesn't really make a lot of sense why she would feel that depressed about it, but she felt she had to kill Valmont, I think his name was. She killed Valmont, who was going to kill Batman, and rather than let Bruce Wayne get her a bunch of lawyers to help defend her, she decided that she would rather go to prison. Really doesn't make any sense. So she goes to prison, and now she's in prison while Iko Hasegawa and Dario are basically taking over the roles of Catwoman and Tomcat in Gotham City. So this issue consists of Selina Kyle talking about how she knows how to survive in prison, and she basically orchestrates an interesting scenario where she ends up stealing from the cafeteria in prison she has Iko Hasegawa and Tomcat essentially steal the items that were being delivered, all the food items and the candy, the cigarettes, all the items that get sent to prison to be fed to prisoners and given to prisoners. Those items are stolen before they can be inventoried by the prison. So Iko Hasegawa and Tomcat, they steal all those prison items before they're actually delivered to the prison system. And so before Gotham Correctional Services can inventory all those goods, they're stolen by Iko Hasegawa as Catwoman and Tomcat, and they smuggle these items into Selina with the cat through one of the cats called Duchess, and this Duchess cat manages to snuggle all this in. Meanwhile, I mean, that seems really awfully hard to believe and a little bit silly, although Tini Howard does play with some good ideas here. One of them is that Selina Kyle has been in jail about 4 or 5 times in the past, it's stated. And what she's done, Selina has actually inserted into certain books in the prison library items that she can use, like a laser pointer that she uses to communicate with Iko Hasegawa and Tomcat on the outside, through a window and through various means, and it's interesting. And she also so she knows how to survive in prison, and she knows when she needs to allow herself to take a beating from her fellow prisoners, knowing that in order to survive, you sometimes have to take a beating, and you got to know who to get along with and how to survive. And that's really what she does. And we meet various members of various number of the prisoners. Delicias. Some of these names are so cool. Delicias, Hoops, Marquise, Foss, Fratawa, Fuller, Kyle. Well, obviously Selina Kyle, but cool names for some of these prisoners. And Selina Kyle does befriend them by actually smuggling in all these goods. And so that's how she gets in the good books with them. She seems to get in the good books with an inmate by the name of Marquise, who really seems to develop a friendship with her, and even at one time was a little bit protective of Selina. And and interestingly enough, and again, a little bit of the history of Selina Kyle. It shows how I liked how Tini Howard got into the head of Selina Kyle, because you understand that Selina Kyle really is someone that she's accustomed to the prison system. She's actually, almost oddly enough, almost comfortable there. She knows how to fit in remarkably well. She knows what she's doing. She's not a victim here. Selina Kyle knew she was going in prison. It almost seemed like she pled guilty. She probably could have gotten off with the murder, given the circumstances of the murder of Valmont. She was protecting Batman. But for some reason, she's decided to go to prison, which in a matter, it still doesn't really make sense to me. But she's clearly comfortable in prison. She knows how to survive. She knows what she's doing. And meanwhile, Iko Hasegawa and Tomcat are doing good on the outside, maintaining the illusion that Catwoman is still around to protect Alleytown. And, again, so the whole thing works here. And the issue ends with Ventura Fremont, who is a new lawyer who believes that Catwoman is innocent and knows that there's more to what went on regarding the death of Valmont than Selina Kyle is letting on. and she really wants to. She refuses to let the so-called truth rest. She believes that there's more to the story. She's going to get to the bottom of it, and she basically insists on being Selina's lawyer. So I think that's a good thing because I feel like I'm missing something here. I don't know why Selina Kyle, in a fit of almost depression, decides to go to prison for something that really she was defending the life of Batman, and so I find it hard to believe that she should be in prison. I don't know why she let herself get sucked into that, but you know, unlike there are some people out there that aren't really enjoying what Tina Howard's doing with Catwoman. I don't mind Tina Howard's writing of Catwoman here. I don't mind it at all. I think it's entertaining enough. I think she puts it enough thought into the stories that, I mean, there is some silliness. I'm not going to lie. I mean, the cat smuggling in some of the goods, it seems a little bit kind of foolish through the ventilation system of the prison, but a lot of it is through the toilet system as well as sewage system. And so a lot of this stuff does, you know, it does seem to possess some degree of believability. I mean, if I can stretch my mind that someone can fly, I mean, I suppose it's possible given the prison system in the DC universe that's smuggling in some food like Selina Kyle does here with contacts on the outside. It's certainly not above the realm of believability. And I did like the art here. The art by Sam Basri I thought was pretty damn good. The variant covers were actually pretty decent. There's a variant cover of Iko Hasagawa as Catwoman, and I believe I was hoping that there was, I think maybe it was last issue, there was an alternate cover of Tomcat himself. But in any event, there's a nice Sweeney Boo alternate cover as well. But that might be a 1 in 25. But in any event, not a bad issue. The next issue, the next comic we're going to review is Detective Comics issue 1068. And the creative team, written by Ram V, art by Albuquerque and Ivan Reese. Colors by Dave Stewart, and inks by Miki. And you know, this issue, this Detective Comics series by Ram V, it started off, I thought, really strong. This idea of this Orgham family coming from another part of the world to sort of come back to Gotham and reclaim some of the power that they apparently had in Gotham's past, involving the land upon which Arkham Asylum is located. And unfortunately, this narrative, I've sort of lost the narrative a little bit. The Detective Comics annual really took me out of this narrative. I feel a little bit lost here. I've read this thing twice. I think I get a little bit of a handle on it. Unfortunately, one of the things that really doesn't work is the backup feature. This has a backup that for the life of me, I'm not going to be able to explain to you guys because I don't have a clue what's going on. And I read it multiple times. But in any event, well, we'll start with the main story itself. Essentially, the Orgham family, they consist of a character, a Wolfman, a guy named Ten Claw, a guy named Dark Blood, and essentially they're involved. They're the head of the Orgham family. There's a Master Orgham, and these are his minions, and they what they're doing is that they're recruiting, or they're basically rounding up Gotham's homeless, the homeless people of Gotham City, and they're subjecting them to something called an ASMR, AZMER. And what is the ASMR? I really have no idea. They're tethering them to the ASMR. And the ASMR looks like this green smoke, this green mist that they inhale, and it causes them to be mind controlled or taken over by the Orghams, or taken over by somebody, taken over by Dark Blood or Ten Claw or the Wolfman. It's not clear, but it's what is the only thing we do know is that when you're infected by the ASMR, we know that you can defeat a person who's possessed by this ASMR if you subject him to intense cold. We know that because Mr. Freeze illustrated their weakness to cold in last issue. And in this issue, Batman confronts the Wolfman, and he essentially incapacitates Wolfman by lacing his bat suit with silver nitrate or some sort of silver oxide, some sort of silver formula, and because he's literally a lycanthrope, which is and so the nano silver is what he has. He's got nanites of nano silver injected in his suit, so that when the Wolfman touches him, he basically becomes paralyzed. Meanwhile, this dark blood character who's got 5 or 6 hands or 5 or 6 arms, he's got 5 arms. And he attacks Batman and he breaks his ribs and he paralyzes him somehow by injecting him in something. And then this other character who, by the name of, I'm not sure, Ten Claw, Wolfman, Dark Blood. I'm not sure who all these characters are. He calls him Ten Claw, and then Ten Claw wants to infect him with the asthma. But meanwhile, Harvey Dent's watching all this, and now Harvey Dent at the beginning of this story, just to be clear, Harvey Dent at the beginning of this entire Ram V's run was essentially trying to basically run for office again, and he was trying to use his power and influence to basically run for office and help the people of Gotham. But what happened is that he was infected by the Asmere. The Orgums basically infected Harvey Dent with the Asmere. But what happened is because Harvey Dent is psychopathic, quite frankly, or mentally ill, the Asmere only had an impact on Harvey Dent. It didn't have any control over Two-Face, his evil side. So this is one case where Harvey Dent's psychopathy actually benefited Harvey Dent. It prevented the Asmere from having complete control over Harvey Dent. And Harvey basically saves Batman's life by killing the Wolfman. And there's a huge battle sequence here, and Harvey Dent steps in and manages to shoot the Wolfman, killing him, rescuing Batman, and taking Batman to safety. And that's basically what he does. And Two-Face takes him to where he ends up meeting with, oh my God, I'm trying to remember it's a character that has a bunch of eyes on his hands. I'm not even sure. Unfortunately, Ram V unfortunately doesn't name who the character is, but it was, I think Dan Waters wrote this character. It's got a character with like 1,000 eyes on all his hands and all his face and everything. And I'm not really sure. Harvey Dent is looking for a Dr. Joy. And in any event, it's not clear to me who, I can't remember the name of this other villain. The villain isn't named. And there is sort of my frustration with this too. There's a lot of new players here, which I give credit to Ram V for maybe trying to introduce some new players, but there's a lack of clarity in this narrative that I wish it was a little bit more clear, because it feels like a chore to me. This feels like a chore. This is not an enjoyable read for me. I'm doing this because I'm trying to make some sense out of it. I get the gist of it. Harvey Dent's psychopathic. He's got 2 sides to his personality, so he can't be completely controlled by the Asmere, which is sort of a mind-controlled mist of some kind, mystical mist, which controls the people, the homeless city of Gotham, because the Orgums want to create an army of homeless people so that they can take over Gotham. That's really it. But now Two-Face has seen through it. He's rescued Batman, and with the help of another former Arkham inmate, it continues to next issue. All right, there you go. Now, the backup feature, I honestly have no idea what's going on. It shows the backup is this is really bad. And they've done this every issue so far, but the stupidity in my mind of having a backup feature and not saying up front on the first page that have the title of the backup on the number 1 page, don't put it on the end. Totally stupid, because it's a horrible transition. The artistic change is jarring, it doesn't work, and it's terrible. Simon Spurrier, the writer, I don't know what the hell he wrote here. I've read it 3 times. I don't know what happens. Danny is the artist. It doesn't work. it just doesn't work. And I don't really know what happened here. Commissioner Gordon is talking with characters who I'm not sure who they are. I'm not even sure who they're named. One character hallucinates and sees Batman as a creature. I don't know why. There's different fonts on the lettering. I don't know why. I don't understand this. It doesn't make any sense. I'm assuming that this is because one or all of the characters is infected with the asthma and they're hallucinating. But why would you want the reader to experience the hallucination when none of it makes any sense? But this is just terrible. It takes me right out of the story. I don't know what's happening. There is somewhat of a clue in the main story where apparently there's demons in the street. There's a music box dealing with sound. And then there's the Asmere. And somehow this is all connected. Horribly done. Doesn't fit well together at all. I don't know what's happening. And I'm not going to read it. Reading it a fourth time would just make me more angry. Like seriously, this is what I would consider to be a fairly epic fail as a backup. This does not work. Don't do this, DC. Don't do it. Don't have the backup supplementing the main story. This is a disaster. This really takes me right out of the story. Because I'm not interested in these characters, and if it's necessary to read the backup, that's another reason why it fails. It doesn't enhance the story; it takes away from it. It causes confusion, and overall, I got to give this issue. I would normally give this issue maybe a 5 out of 10, but with the backup, I give it a 3. That's how bad this issue is overall. It's serviceable if you just read the main story. If you read the backup, it's going to leave a very bad taste in your mouth. It just doesn't work. And the story just doesn't make sense. And the thing is, if you're going to read this as a trade, will this read better as a trade? Well, it depends how they're going to if you're going to package this as a trade, what are you going to do with the backup? Are you going to put the backup as one story in the trade? Okay. But then that's not going to make any sense because you kind of sort of got to read the backup with the main story, sort of, kind of, I think. Not that I know what's happening in the backup, but this is a painful read. But I'm going to stop talking now. Maybe Jace got more out of it. He did get more out of the backups than before. But I mean, Danny here as an artist, the art just doesn't work. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. And, well, it's really unfortunate. But this Ram V story as all is very disappointing. And I'm tempted to take it off my pull list, but I like the style of the cover A's because all the cover A's together look pretty cool. So I'm getting it. This is a cover buy for me because the story here, Ram V, this is flowery language for the most part that maybe worked for Swamp Thing, but boy, this is a pretty big failure for me in terms of a Batman run, and I'll just leave that as that. All right, the next comic we're going to be reviewing is Punchline, the Gotham Game, issue 4. Interestingly enough, it just occurred to me that I don't know if Punchline, the Gotham Game is a miniseries or not. I really wish this was just, I'm hoping this is just a miniseries because I don't want more than 6 issues of Punchline. I don't think she definitely absolutely hasn't earned it. She needs to be a villain which she needs to be put in her place. She needs to fail epically and be put in her place more than once. And she needs to earn her rep as opposed to have it forced. Now, I'm happy to report that in this particular issue, Punchline does in fact fail. She fails. She does fail. In fact, she frankly is humiliated by Black Mask, which actually made me feel good because I don't like Punchline. And when I say I don't like Punchline, I thought she had a lot of potential, but that was completely ruined in the Batman Urban in the Joker backup, the Joker backup story. It was terribly done, just horribly done. How she got away with all the stuff that happened in Joker War, was just horribly done. I'm not a big fan of the whole Royal Flush Gang, as if Punchline, this glorified high school dropout that supposedly is a genius, is certainly going to take over the Royal Flush Gang. This just doesn't really work for me. It doesn't work. She's basically a piece of ass. that is, you know, is a fairly competent hand-to-hand combatant, but even that shouldn't be able to hold her own against even a common street thug, to be honest, if I'm being brutally honest. But it is what it is. We're suddenly supposed to believe that she's got the wherewithal and the intelligence to take over the Royal Flush Gang that's been basically involved in mafia-like activities for literally decades and is a family of criminals, and she's just going to waltz right in and take it over. It's just ridiculous. And fortunately, though, here in writers Teenie Howard and Blake Howard, I think, did a good job in this issue. Art by Max Rainer, Louis Guerrero on the colors. In that, you know, Punchline is made a fool of here by Black Mask, and I love the best line in the entire comic. And boy, does this bitch deserve it. Was when Black Mask basically tells Punchline, I'm sure, one thing's for sure, Punchline, Joker sure knew a good piece of ass when he saw one. I'm sure whatever you saw in him, I can give it to you twice as good. And of course, that, I don't know, apparently that upsets Punchline when you give her a compliment like that. What a bitch, you know? I mean, take a pill and relax. A guy can't tell you that you have a nice ass, you're a nice piece of ass. Come on, Punchline, what's wrong? In any event, I loved it because, you know, the Black Mask makes a move here, and he attacks Port Royale, and he basically is taking out and decimating all the work that Punchline did by trying to take over a warehouse by from Iko Hasagawa, from that crime family, all the work she did and actually essentially defeating Catwoman, or managing to escape Catwoman in that fiasco that led with Catwoman, that resulted in Catwoman killing Valmont, because Valmont was going to kill Batman, and the villain Amygdala was used by Punchline to attack Catwoman. And so basically that freed up Punchline to escape. Now, apparently, for whatever reason, you know, the void created by that chaos, Black Mask moves in along with the other members of the mafia, of it, the Tommaso Mafia, Scarface Mafia, the Ventriloquist, and Tiger Shark, which are new mafiosos that are on the scene, and they're going to fill in the void that apparently the chaos created by Punchline trying to play the Gotham game, hence the name. We now know how the title to this series, the Gotham game. Punchline name drops the title of this series in this issue, saying she's playing the Gotham game. And unfortunately, Black Mask basically says, well, I'm destroying Port Royale, you know, while you're here. You know, they you know, Colin, who is Bluebird's brother, Colin, is actually captured by his boyfriend and taken to his boyfriend Bluff, because there's all these poker names, right? Like the Jack of Diamonds, the King of this, blah, blah, blah. And I guess Punchline is supposed to be the Queen or something. I don't know. And Bluff, his boyfriend, is Colin, and Colin is Bluebird's Harper Row, who is Bluebird. Her brother Cullen Rowe is boyfriends to this Bluff character, and he's basically kept prisoner in the basically the basement of Port Royale, which is attacked by Black Mask. So his life is in danger, and so ultimately this Bluff character is going to want to save his boyfriend Cullen, who is in prison by Punchline under Port Royale. Next, but that's going to happen next issue, because what happened at the end of this issue is that the Spade character, who is, I guess, the Ace of Spades, he's going to, you know, he was, as he's shot and killed by, as he's laid dying, shot by Black Mask's men at the end, he initiates an endgame protocol by uttering the phrase "Ace is high," and so I suspect that that's going to result in the destruction or some sort of defense protocol taking place at Port Royal. And so, you know, again, a lot happened here. I like the fact that this is showing Punchline as having failed, that this is a battle between the various crime families, and I like that. And it's sort of tying in with Teenie Howard, and I think it's Bruce Howard. What they're scripting here, there is sort of a connection to what's going on in the pages of Catwoman, and so there's some connection there. And this isn't bad. I'm actually this is much better than the backups were in the pages of the Joker. So I appreciate what Tini Howard and Bruce Howard are doing. There is a story here, and I like the fact that Punchline is failed. I appreciate that then she's being humiliated. I'm sure she's going to end up getting one up on Black Mask. I should also say that Black Mask, there's a new design here for Black Mask. He now has a broken skull, fragments of a skull on top of his Black Mask, as opposed to it being just looking like a black skull. He's got a white skull fragments on top of a black mask. It looks actually kind of cool. I like it. So kudos to the artist here, who again, have some consistency. DC editorial. Sometimes you put the credits at the front, sometimes you put it at the back. How about a little bit of consistency? I mean, pick one. And if you're going to pick one, why not put it at the front? In any event, Max Rainer, artist, great job, my friend. Colorist by Luis Guerrera, very good. Becca Carey on the letters. It's not bad. I was actually entertained with this issue. I really like Black Mask, and I think that Federico Tommaso is one of the head of the Tommaso crime family. I think these are references maybe to some DC artists and creators and writers. And Arnold Wesker, the ventriloquist, Mr. Scarface, who is the dummy that he sort of the dummy, Tiger Shark, smuggler and black marketeer extraordinaire, and then Ronan Sinus, of course, is Black Mask. And so good. We got some good mafioso storytelling going on here that is frankly it's entertaining to me. I don't mind it, and again, I don't mind what Tini Howard's doing here. It's a little bit there's some little nonsense, but overall, I think you'll be entertained. This is far superior to the Punchline in the backup of the Joker. All right, what do we got next? All right, what we got next is Blue Beetle Graduation Day, issue 3 of 6. I think it's becoming increasingly clear with Blue Beetle that DC Comics wants Blue Beetle to be the Power Rangers of the DC universe, the new Power Rangers, because we get different colors of beetles in this issue. We get a green beetle. We got the blue beetle. We get the green beetle. There's a purple beetle. I'm sure we're going to get a yellow beetle, because we have the Reach. The Reach is this powerful alien race, and the Reach is broadcasting some sort of information to the Earth. And what exactly is the nature of the broadcast? We're not entirely clear. Neither is Batman, but Blue Beetle resents the fact that Batman and Superman have decided to take Jamie Reyes off the table. Remember, which kind of reminds me of what Superman did in World's Finest, almost taking David off the playing field and almost taking away his powers before changing his mind. Superman and Batman here, they don't want Jamie. They want Jamie as Blue Beetle, sort of like, they're afraid that he's going to misuse the Scarab power, and he's a liability, and they want him to basically just, stay off the field. Well, that creates some tension, because Blue Beetle and Starfire think that Jamie Reyes should be given a little bit more credit and should be given more responsibility. And we also know that Jamie was attacked. Blue Beetle was attacked by Dynasties, who possesses a scarab of her own, and her real name is Ixio Erazo, and she's got one of the other Reach scarabs. So it appears is that there's more than one Reach scarab, and one of the scarabs is a blue scarab that Jamie Reyes has, and this Xiomara has Dynasties. She's got another scarab, which I think is maybe this purple scarab. And we know that there's a green beetle that shows up in this issue, a green beetle, and he's got a green scarab from the Reach. And it's basically discovered here that Starfire has a connection, because Starfire battles with the green beetle and learns that in part that in the past the Reach was at war with Starfire's homeworld of Tamaran, and that an uneasy alliance was formed, and that the Tamaranians rescued some of the people who made up the Reach were peace-loving members of the Reach, and these peace lovers were called the Horizon. So this alien race called the Reach, there's a faction of the alien race of the Reach called the Horizon that are peace lovers, and the Horizon are sworn enemies of the Reach. And where I think this is going to be headed is that we're going to have all the heroes, in particular Blue Beetle and the Horizon, battling against these other green beetles and purple beetles with their own individual names, who represent the Reach. And because these the way it seems to be playing out is that these Reach scarabs, that they're kind of a warning system, because the question that has to be asked is why don't the Reach simply invade? What are they waiting for? Well, they seem to be sending these scarabs to Earth, represented by, we got this new green beetle now, and we have this Dynastes, who's kind of a purple beetle. And what are they doing? Like, what's the end game here? We do know that this green beetle is actually this very attractive woman when clad in leather pants and leather pants and a green military top with short black hair, and very clearly she appears that the Horizon are coming to Earth, and Starfire, of course, wants to team up with the Horizon, because the Horizon are the peace-loving factions of the Reach. The Reach are evil, and the Reach also have their own scarabs on their side. So it's going to be essentially, at this point, it looks like Blue Beetle versus Dynastes, who's sort of a purple beetle, and then you got this other green beetle, and there might even be more color beetles. So I expect we're going to have like the glorified Power Rangers, but a bunch of different colored beetles. We got different color power rings, we got different color kryptonite, now we got different colors of beetles in the DC universe. And so there you have it. And so I think that's where this is heading. This ends with the purple, I guess this purple-like scarab or purple scarab person looking for Jamie. And so this is clearly building to a head here. I'm actually really curious to see where Josh Trujillo, the writer Josh Trujillo, is going with this. The artist is Adriana Gutierrez. I think the art was pretty good here. The Will Quintana on the colors did a really good job. Lucas Catana, letterer, is pretty good. There's definitely sort of an anime manga feel to the art, but it is very visceral. The artist Adrian Gutierrez does action scenes reasonably well. It's some of the action is really good. The colors are really bright. You really get a sense of what's at stake. And you can, even when it shows the Horizon, you can see like a person, a member of the Horizon, who are the peace-loving aspect of the Reach. One's cloud all in red, one's cloud all in orange, one's cloud in purple, one's cloud in black, one's cloud in sort of an off, sort of a little darker purple. So I got to wonder if those are, if they're all representations of different scarabs. And so all this is beautifully artistically rendered. I think it works quite well. I would suggest that if you're fans of Power Rangers, you might want to get to the bottom. You might want to pick this up, because this is a speculator alert. First appearance of a green scarab, a green beetle. First appearance of a character that might end up being what is a glorified purple beetle. I don't know. It's something's going on here in the pages of Blue Beetle, and you might want to pick this up. Incidentally, this comes in an English language version and a Spanish language version as well. So it's worth checking out for sure. Now, all right. So the next issue that we have to review is Lazarus Planet. We were once gods. What can I say about this? To be blunt, I'm disappointed with Lazarus Planet tie-ins. I'm not happy with them. I've obviously read this We Were Once Gods, and I've read the ones that will be coming out in subsequent weeks, onwards to a month from now, next week, the week following, and they're all just anthology stories. That's really all they are. They're one-shot stories that really, they're only very sort of peripherally related to the actual storyline of Lazarus Planet. They're all, unfortunately, what they are is they're just stories that deal with individual characters, some of which literally we are introduced to, and they die right away. I'm baffled by some of the choices here, to be quite frank, and it's just really disappointing. And I know last week when Jace and I reviewed Lazarus Planet, Assault on Krypton. It had nothing to do with Krypton. It had nothing to do with any of that, and the stories were meh at best. But in any event, I'm interested in the actual story of Lazarus Planet that was started in Lazarus Planet Alpha, written by Mark Waid. And if you want, I can tell you safely, guys, you can literally avoid every single one of these issues that are in between. You can literally go from Lazarus Planet Alpha right to Lazarus Planet Beta or Lazarus Planet Omega. That will be the ending story, because I guarantee you that Omega will simply summarize what happened with all these issues and tell you what was actually important to know, because 95% of it is not important to know at all. Now, having said that, if you are a speculator and you're really big on key appearances, there might be a little bit of a speculator alert that I will let you know about as we go through this. If you, which may or may not, some of these characters might be interesting in the future. They're not interesting how they're told here, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I can't sugarcoat that. So now, in the meantime, I think we might have a guest joining us. I think Jace might be on the hook here, so I'm just going to pause and come back and put him on here. Just give me one moment. All right, guys, we're back, and Jace, it's so good to have you here. I'm glad you managed to finish your work and get back.
Yeah. Sorry, late everybody. I'll give my thoughts on the books Rocky's already talked about in just a second, but I think we're going to go through this Lazarus Planet anthology first.
All right, sorry guys, we were just cut off a little bit there, and hopefully that won't happen again. But with respect to Lazarus Planet, I really like some of the alternate covers. So the good thing is that you're going to have your choice of some pretty cool covers, and yes, and this Lazarus Planet, We Were Once Gods. It starts off whereas last week we reviewed Assault on Krypton, and that moniker Assault on Krypton didn't appear to have anything to do with the actual content. This here starts off telling that Earth is home to humans and superhumans of all walks of life, but it's also home to those beyond, the gods of Themyscira, the kingdom of Atlantis, and aliens of immeasurable power, and creatures larger than life who consider themselves gods, and even these gods are not immune to the carnage unleashed by the Lazarus effect. And essentially the stories told in this particular issue have to do with precisely that, the impact that the Lazarus reign has on the gods and the mythology of the DC universe. And the first story that we talk about, that we read, is called Hunger Pains. It deals essentially with Aquaman in particular, and it's script and art by Francis Manapul, letters by Unroll Design, cover by David Marquez and Alejandro Sanchez. And this particular issue, I thought I was a little disappointed in this one, if only because I felt that it starts off where we're just showing a group of people that seem to have rescued someone in an unknown place. I thought maybe it was Amnesty Bay, but it's not identified. It just seemed to be people in a cabin that rescued this person that was sort of washed up on the shore. At first, I thought this person was Aquaman. It was unclear because it looks like Aquaman. He's got long hair. I thought it maybe was Aquaman, but it wasn't. And ultimately, this person ends up waking up. This person has been affected by the Lazarus reign. And then ultimately, out of the blue, Aquaman shows up because this person ends up attacking all these people who are just trying to help him. And Aquaman just shows up and basically rescues this person, and then basically tells them that this person is from the trenches. And so those creatures that make up the trench in Aquaman lore, think of the first 5 or 6 issues of Jeff Johns' Aquaman New 52 arc, where he talks about the trench. Those creatures that make up the trench, some of those creatures have been transformed by the Lazarus Rain into, I guess, sort of human hybrids of some kind that are maybe capable now of coming ashore. And that's what happens here. And Aquaman basically wants to protect and feed them and help them and protect them from maybe being misunderstood by humans. And that's what happens here. And then at the end of this, it basically talks about this story is going to be continued in the dawn of DC. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what future comic book we have coming up. I don't recall us having an Aquaman comic book coming out anytime soon, so I don't really know what that means, being continued into the dawn of DC. But clearly, we know that the trenches, the people who make up the trench, those creatures of the trench, are going to now be transformed into more human-like creatures. And I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if it's that interesting that it's going to compel me to want to pick up an Aquaman comic, if that's what this is resulting. And what did you think of this backup or this particular story? So,
yeah, I mean, you're right. We haven't heard anything about any sort of Dawn of DC Aquaman title, but I gotta think, based on all these stories, I'll say, continuing in Dawn of DC. The DC's trying to plant some seeds to give us an idea of what might be coming. I mean, it was rumored for a long time in the Earth 1 series that were being put out as hardbacks first and then reprinted as trades, that Francis Manapul was going to give us an Aquaman project, both as a writer and an artist. So maybe it's, finally time. Because when I saw his name on this, I thought, well, I wonder if he's using any of the ideas that he had for that Earth 1. So certainly interesting to hear that this guy was an ancestor of the current Atlanteans, and I don't know why the Lazarus Rain would have brought them back, but it's doing all kinds of weird things. And that's kind of the context of this whole anthology, right? Lazarus Planet, just to show us, okay, what's happening out there in the world. But DC's trend to put out these one-shots and anthologies that tie into a main event, I've just never really cared for it. They've been doing it for a long time, going all the way back to I guess Infinite Crisis was when when you think about stories before then, everything would be, they would do a 12, if it was a big event, they do like a 12 issue, and you would have space for all of this different kind of stuff. What's happening with Aquaman, what's happening with Batman, what's happening, and then they would cross over into their main titles. It just doesn't seem that they do it that way anymore, and I don't know if it's to get more product out on the stands or what, but I honestly don't care for it. I'd rather, if you have a regular Aquaman book and you want to cross over Lazarus Planet with Aquaman, then you tell that story in the Aquaman title. So, I mean, this was okay. Is it memorable? Probably not. Does it hint at something interesting to come? Yeah, perhaps. But where that will show up, we don't know, other than the hint that, to be continued in the Dawn of DC. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. And I agree. We'll have to, again, it is a tease, and I think it accomplishes what it's supposed to do. And that is introduce potentially new characters and hopefully lead to better stories. The second story in this one deals with Martian Manhunter, and I actually enjoyed it a little bit more. It deals with a new character by the name of Raphael Arce. Kind of an interesting name, Arce. And basically, Arce is he has one thing in common with Martian Manhunter. This new character, Raphael Arce, is actually an empath, and he's in Metropolis, and he apparently is in the Metropolis hospital, and he's actually saving lives. He's an empath, and he has the ability, because of the Lazarus Rain, to basically absorb the pain and the suffering of others. And what he does, he's overwhelmed with a strong desire to help people. But Martian Manhunter stumbles upon him because he's biting off too much more than he can chew. And it's actually quite interesting. I apologize. You usually start these things off. The writer is Dan Waters, and the artist is Max Dunbar, and Romeo Ferjudo Jr. does the colors. And what I like about what I like about what Dan Waters does, I think he comes up with sort of a creative idea in dealing with Doomsday. And what happens is that this Raphael character he finds himself in front of the statue of Superman, and because apparently the most psychological pain and trauma ever experienced by the citizens of Metropolis was when Superman was killed and Doomsday. Doomsday had, in the original iteration of Doomsday, he had the ability to evolve. Every time Doomsday was killed, he would resurrect himself and come back, and you would not be able to kill him in the same manner you killed him before because he would evolve past it. So he would become Doomsday is always increasingly more difficult to kill, and in this case, there's a psychological component to Doomsday where the psychological trauma itself of Doomsday has him coming forward, and Doomsday tries to spread around the metropolis like a psychic virus. And so even Death himself can't destroy Doomsday. Even the memory of Doomsday is evolving into a psychic virus. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, I don't know what the hell that means, but it seems pretty deadly. And it infects this Raphael character by literally changing him into sort of like kind of like a Doomsday looking psychic powerful character. And it was through Martian Manhunter, John Jones, helps him basically absorb that pain and suffering, but it creates so much psychic heat that the carbon in the human body of Raphael Ars becomes so hot that it, just like when you heat up carbon, it turns into a diamond because it comes under so much pressure. He turns into a psychic gem. So the terror and the horror of Doomsday, along with this Raphael Ars, is now encapsulated in this psychic gem that Martian Manhunter has. And it ends with Superman and Martian Manhunter sort of looking at the Earth and feeling somewhat sad about the sacrifice that Raphael made because he gave his life. Now, again, I'm assuming that this psychic gem, is going to play a role at some point in the future, at a future storyline, just like the individual, the life form from the trench in the Aquaman story is going to play a role. So I thought it was a clever play on the Daredevil scenario, incorporating it into Martian Manhunter and the idea of empathy and the power of Doomsday, even as a memory. I thought it was very clever by Dan Waters. And so what do you think of that?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty emotional story, and it showed how much John Jones really has accepted Earth as his adopted home. And then he has the conversation with Superman at the end, which set aside the fact that you can't talk in space. They just, maybe they're communicating telepathically with Martian Manhunter's powers, but it's not indicated. They still have normal word balloons, so maybe just an oversight there. Well, I guess. I don't know. John Jones does have a little bit of a squiggly line on kind of the little arrow, the point of his word balloon. But anyway, be that as it may, I thought it was interesting to contrast the different ways that these aliens who have adopted Earth see the Earth. John sees it more analytically. Superman maybe from a more emotional standpoint. But it was a very emotional story, and to see Ars, as you said, condensed down into that rock, it was very sad because, here's maybe a character that's showing us some of the best traits of humanity. He gets powers from the Lazarus rain and doesn't for a moment think of himself, but only thinks of how he can use that power to help others, and take away their pain. So I thought that was really interesting. Seems like we've seen the last of him based on,
Yeah.
the fact that he's compressed down into this red crystal or what have you, but maybe not. Who knows? It's comics. This one doesn't say, to be continued or what have you. So it does feel like a one and done, but I really enjoyed the art as well and the colors. I thought the whole visual team did a fantastic job. And you're right about Doomsday. Just the fact that even as kind of a psychic memory, he's so powerful. Just a reminder of how formidable Doomsday is. So yeah, all in all, a solid story. But for me, it really, Max Dunbar on the line work and Fajardo Jr. on the colors really did some of their best work. I'll put it that way. So
Yeah, agreed.
up next is the Wonder Woman story. Philip Kennedy Johnson is the writer. Jack Herbert is the artist. Alex Guermas on colors and Pat Brosso on letters. This one was interesting. First of all, I'm a huge Jack Herbert fan. I don't know why he doesn't have a regular gig at DC. Maybe he's not fast enough, but I always love his art. The colors by Guermas are fantastic. And again, it's just, I guess, context for how, the events of Lazarus Planet are affecting the overall DC universe as a whole. This time we're getting a glimpse of how it is affecting Themyscira, and to be continued in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods. So another one of the one-shots, how much this might play into or affect Wonder Woman going forward, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I will say I never had really thought or considered PKJ as the writer for Wonder Woman, but based on the strength of this story, I would love to see him give it a shot because I thought this was great. I really love the scene with Theseus and this undead army rising up out of the sea, covered like in barnacles and swords and what have you from being under the water dead for so long. So I thought that was really cool. Seashells in their hair rotted away. But is it super memorable? No, because I don't think it really has a chance to really go anywhere. We learn about the threat. We see the Amazonians come together to fight against the threat. Theseus mentions that their army is 1,000 strong, and it's interesting because when the story starts, we see Wonder Woman and Bia, and they're sparring on the shores, and the sun is shining, and it's nice clear skies and what have you, and it reminds you that Themyscira, it's got that magical protection, so the rain are not actually falling on Themyscira, but the waters are still washing the Lazarus rain up onto the island, is still being affected. So I thought that was really interesting as well. So a lot of good things here. But again, in an anthology format, it's kind of tough to really say, how important is this? How much is going to play into any sort of Wonder Woman story going forward? So I kind of have mixed feelings about this one. But the art is fantastic, no doubt about that. Color work is great as well. What do you think?
The art really stands out here, man. Jack Herbert is just amazing. It's amazing. My favorite page is it shows the Amazons led by Queen Nubia as they're on their horseback rushing toward the shore to help Diana and Bia fight the army of the undead army of Theseus, and the undead armies of Heracles led by Theseus. And it really feels epic. And I really like the way that PKJ tells this story, and I think that it's appropriate because when you think about it, this is a guy that I think it's a good fit that PKJ would be writing this Wonder Woman story. By the way, shout out to you. You did a fantastic interview with PKJ, Philip Kennedy Johnson. Very informative. I encourage everyone to go watch or listen to it. It's really good. And he mentions you asked him questions about this, and this is it's a perfect fit for him because he just comes off Superman Warworld, where really, I mean, Superman in Warworld, that Warworld story is perfect, ideally suited, I think, for Wonder Woman and Amazon Warriors, if you ask me. So I just think this is a great natural fit for him. If you've been following the adventures of Wonder Woman in the pages of Wonder Woman's comic, we came out of Trial of the Amazons. We know that there's the Well of Souls, where abused women who've been killed in the past come through the Well of Souls. Well, the Well of Souls has been corrupted by the Lazarus rain as well. And so now what comes through the Well of Souls are any soul that has ever been killed by an Amazon comes through the Well of Souls. And they're also coming through Doom's doorway. And so the doors of Hades are flung open, and the land of the dead of Hades is now empty. And so this is a pretty big deal. So now this is leading into Lazarus Revenge of the Gods, which is tying into the storyline that the Kloonrads are doing, which I have not been big fans of. I've been hard on them, but I'm hoping that maybe inspired by the Lazarus reign of the Lazarus planet, that we're going to have some fun here, because we don't just get this. This is a story that's going to be continuing not just in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods, which I think is a 4-issue series, but we're also going to be getting the continuation of the story in Wonder Woman as well. So I'm really looking forward to that as I quickly kiss my daughter goodnight. Good night, you. Good night. So I actually thought this was a well scripted story that really teases well what's going to be happening with the gods. And I just hope that, you know, I don't want to be cynical, but, you know, the potential to, I mean, the gods were already screwed up under Clunrads. I mean, they write them as sort of like Hera wants revenge anyway, because the gods are angry at mankind for not worshiping them. And so they're angry at mankind already. So how much more perverted and crazy are the gods going to become that they're already screwed up? So I'm not really sure. It almost feels like this is almost a redundant plot point. Wonder Woman's gods are already crazy. She saved them from the graveyard of the gods. They're back, and now through Hera they want revenge. They already wanted revenge. That's an established plot point with Clunrads already. So to have Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods sounds redundant to me, but coincidentally it does seem to tie in well with what they're actually doing with their storyline anyway. So they might as well go with it. So, but
yeah. Again, curious to see how this might affect, and will Dawn of DC change? Wonder Woman will change creative teams. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. The next story, Price of Eternity, deals with Mary Marvel and Malik, who is the White Adam, written by Josie Campbell, art by Caitlin Yarsky, colors by Jordie Bellaire, and Clayton Cowles on the letters. This one was, I have to admit, I had fun with the Shazam, the Champion of Shazam series, the 4-issue series written by Josie Campbell, with art by Yvonne Doc Shaner. We reviewed the 4th and final issue of that series last issue. This sort of continues basically where that left off. Mary Marvel has had a vision of Billy Batson and members of the Shazam family sort of trapped in the Rock of Eternity, and this issue is her going to try to find Black Adam because she needs help. But Black Adam's not anywhere to be found because he's involved in all the machinations going on in his particular series, which I don't need to get into. Suffice to say, she finds Malik. And what I want to give props to writer Josie Campbell here for is that I think she captures the voice of Malik quite well. I find Malik more enduring here and less annoying than under the scripts of Christopher Priest in the pages of Black Adam. Malik here seems to express some shock and dismay at a talking rabbit that Mary Marvel has, and basically Mary Marvel very wisely sort of relies and sort of guilts Malik into helping her come to the Rock of Eternity because she's got to rescue Billy because he's trapped in the Rock of Eternity, and ultimately they end up going there, and that's where for me the story breaks down a little bit, and I'm going to be a little bit critical because the whole storyline where Billy gets kind of trapped in the Rock of Eternity and why he gave up the power of Shazam, why he feels he needs to be trapped in the Rock of Eternity. I thought it was because he needed to protect, because there was all those evil forces, those 7, whatever those, the chaotic forces that he was trapping in the Rock of Eternity, and he was, and this issue through all the wonkiness of the Lazarus reign. For some reason, it ends with Billy just up and deciding that instead of him being trapped in the Rock of Eternity, the Lazarus reign, the impact it has on him is that he can now trap the Rock of Eternity within himself, I think, which seems really wonky to me. But, I mean, at least it gets Billy out of the Rock of Eternity. So now Billy himself, it ends with him being the embodiment of the Rock of Eternity, and somehow he can be Shazam and Mary Marvel can still be Mary Marvel. I'm not sure who's the champion of Shazam now? Who's the numero uno one? Are they all equal? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure exactly kind of what went on here. It's kind of wonky, but I'm just glad we got Shazam, Mary Marvel, and Malik working together. I thought the dialogue was well. I think they worked well together. I thought Josie Campbell scripted some good interaction and some good dialogue. Plot-wise, look, this goes all the way back to Future State. The wonkiness of Josie Campbell, I feel for her because there's only so much lipstick you can put on the pig of trying to explain the whole Billy Batson in the Rock of Eternity nonsense, and then Mary Marvel, what she did in Lazarus Planet Alpha and then coming here to the Rock of Eternity again. There's some wonkiness here, but there's also fun to be had here. And this is Josie Campbell. I like the voice that she has to the characters, and I feel that she's done her homework. I give her credit because I thought she captured Malik's voice nice, and in a way that he was actually less annoying than he was under Christopher Priest. And I actually kind of like the way this ended because it brings us Billy Batson and Mary Marvel and Malik all back working together. I like these as a team, and I'm curious to see where this goes. So, what do you think of this? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying wholeheartedly. Um, it's an interesting twist. I don't know where Josie's supposed to go. Honestly, when we talk about, okay, well, Billy's trapped in the Rock of Eternity. He's tied to it. I've talked to a writer. You mentioned my interview with Philip Kennedy Johnson. And talked to him right after he took over Action Comics from Brian Michael Bendis, and it's like you don't immediately want to come in and just undo what the previous writer's done before, for a few reasons. First of all, you don't want to disrespect what they've done. Plus, you could have some readers that feel betrayed. Well, why should I read this when, as soon as the next writer comes in, they're just going to completely throw everything out? So I get it. It does open up some possible interesting storylines going forward with, what can be done. We saw the wizard Shazam, get angry at the end, sort of betrayed. Why is this doing that? Why do I, bother to share my power? Blah, blah, blah. Typical maniacal things. And it's interesting because if you think back to when Shazam was first created, much simpler time, Golden Age, and it was clear that the wizard Shazam was kind of this benevolent old guy, and he was very much on the side of angels, so to speak. And here we have a wizard Shazam who's seemingly much more maniacal and, maybe doesn't have the best interest of Billy and the rest of the Shazam family at heart. So it's kind of interesting what can play out. What are the consequences of the Rock of Eternity being inside Billy Batson now? So it's interesting.
We know one of the consequences. The wizard has lost the connection to the Rock of Eternity because it's inside Billy Batson now, and he now is exclaiming that they're not worthy. And I think that the Lazarus reign made the wizard evil because he was never against Billy or the Marvel family in the past that I'm aware of. But maybe I stand to be corrected on that. It's odd to me, but
yeah, we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see exactly, what the long-term consequences of that are, because again, we're not sure at this point. But again, it's interesting to speculate. I think this, it's an interesting take, and we're just going to have to wait and see, basically, how this all plays out in the long run. But getting Billy back, getting him out of being trapped in, the Rock of Eternity in whatever way it's done, I think is a step in the right direction, because, whether Josie Campbell did a good job in her Champion of Shazam series, and I think she did a fantastic job, that's kind of not the point, right? Like when you're a casual reader and you pick up a book that says Shazam on it, you expect to get Billy Batson. You expect to have some, Captain Marvel is Billy Batson. And so when that's not there, you can understand why people might feel a little cheated, I guess you'd say. So in the long run, I think it's good that it played out this way. So where this might continue, again, we don't know. They haven't said that there's going to be any sort of Shazam title going forward. But it feels like there might be a Josie Campbell, follow-up to the 4-issue that we've had so far. Other than saying, more Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods fodder, I guess you'd say. So we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. I thought the art was solid. Thought the color work was done well. Also, you're right about Malik and him being a little more not so inscrutable, I guess. But that's inscrutable is a good word to describe Christopher Priest's style of writing. So So all in all, you're right. Do you need to read this to read Lazarus Planet? No. But does it add context? Yeah, perhaps. perhaps it does. We'll have to wait and see. And there is a Dawn of DC checklist, which I think is interesting because it's so sparse, right? We know in March DC's not putting out only 3 books. In February, they only listed Superman #1. In March, we've got Adventures of Superman, John Kent 1, Unstoppable Doom Patrol 1, Harley Quinn 28. Like, we know there's much, much more than that.
Yeah.
So more to come when they get around to announcing things, which, man, it feels like it's overdue at this point. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, then the next issue comic we're reviewing is The Human Target #11. So what do you think of this, Chase?
yeah, penultimate issue of Human Target. Tom King, writer. Fantastic artwork. This has been the most beautiful book on stands for like the past year since it started, basically. Greg Smallwood, almost a charcoal style, a throwback style. We've talked about how almost this mod, 60s feel to the book. Letters by Clayton Cowles. Smallwood's doing his own colors. It's just beautiful. There's a charm to it that's so interesting. And in this particular issue, I won't say there's a lot of dialogue in terms of, okay, there's more dialogue than you would see in previous issues, but there are pages where you have kind of all the scripting on one side and then almost like illustrations to go along with those on the other. It's a very emotional issue with Ice finally kind of losing her patience with Christopher Chance, clearly in love with him. He's in love with her, but she just, the guilt, right? Like all along, she's been the one that poisoned Lex Luthor, or tried to poison Lex, and in doing so, poisoned Christopher Chance. Initially, her thought was to stay close to him so that he wouldn't learn that she, along with Fire and some other Justice Leaguers, really it was her and Fire that conspired to kill Luthor, but unbeknownst to others, they helped. Booster got certain things that needed for the poison. Guy kind of made up an excuse that he had done it to kind of throw Chance off the trail. So again, very emotional issue. I keep having to remind myself when I read this, it's Black Label. It's not in continuity. Christopher Chance is not really dead, or not really going to die. But this is Black Label. Anything can happen. It's out of continuity, and I find myself hoping for a happy ending. Which might be the most foolish thing I've ever, hoped for in my life, based on the fact it's Black Label and it's Tom King, right? There's no happy ending on the horizon, but man, I love these two together. I love Ice and Christopher Chance together, and I love that Tom King gave us this kind of confrontation that he gave us, right? Like all along, Christopher Chance has been falling in love with her, but all along he never stopped suspecting that she might be. He was her first initial thought, like she was the one that did it, right? She had the best motive, the best means, and he finds himself falling in love with her, but in the back of his mind, he never dismissed her as a suspect, and that's ultimately what helps him, solve the mystery of his own death. But despite that, it's so dichotomous, right? She's the one that's responsible for his death, and yet he loves her with everything that he is, because of who she is, and yeah, that guilt that she feels. She didn't want to get caught, obviously, and she wanted to have justice and revenge, and she certainly never meant to kill Christopher Chance. But at the same time, does she want to get away with it so she can have a chance again to actually kill Luthor? Does she want to get away with it just because it's human nature? Like, there's so much there. There's so much layer of emotion, and with the gorgeous art, just another fantastic installment to the series. I mean, where do you go from here with 12? It's just so emotional. I feel like it almost could have ended right here, but I guess we'll see what King has in store for us with the final issue. But I thought this was fantastic, as it has been throughout. So, what were your thoughts?
I just love this. One of the I know there's another reviewer out there whose reviews I respect, who's doesn't have a high opinion of this series, and his viewpoint was that, well, we already know what happened at the end of the last issue, and it's true, we did. At the end of last issue, we have all the information as to know what happened. All Ice does in this issue, in their conversation, is just tell us what we already know, but just spells it out. And ultimately, it just sort of spells it out. And there's such a tragedy to it because Ice, there's a wonderful scene, or one of my favorite sequences is there's a scene where Ice says to Chase, "I'm not sweet and nice," and she says basically, "F you." Like she did plan to kill Lex, and goddamn, she planned to kill Lex, and then there's another innocent person who ends up getting the poison, and it's this Christopher Chance, and her and Fire, and ultimately with Guy Gardner's help, they get embroiled in the investigation that Chris Chance is doing, but they know that he's got less than 12 days to live, so all they got to do is ride out the 12 days and he's going to be dead anyway. But damn it, Ice falls in love. And she finally meets the love of her life, and the sad irony is that she's responsible for the love of her life dying, and ironically enough, she meets the love of her life because she crossed the line for revenge. And it's like, and she's so angry at herself, and she wants to be punished, and she's so frustrated with the human target. Christopher Chance won't get angry with her because he understands her. He understands her so well, and he loves her, but he understands where she's coming from, and he doesn't have a hateful bone in his body. He's accepting his fate, and he's prepared not to have Ice, be subjected to justice or the court system or anything like that. He's prepared to die. And as he says to her, he goes, "I won't miss you. I'll just be gone." He's prepared to do that. I mean, this is a love story. And so for those that think, well, the mystery was done at the end of issue 10, you're kind of missing the point of the series. It's a love story. And that's what this art is conveying. And just the amazing, just those moments here, where, the silent moments, and again, Greg Smallwood, of tears flowing from Ice's face as she's laying on her head on the chest of Chris, and the island of ice as they're floating in the ocean. They got 24 hours left before he dies, and they're having these moments, and it just works so well. I can't wait for this to be in a hardcover. I really hope every one of Tom King's hardcovers so far that I've gotten, they're regular size hardcovers. All of them have been that way. The Mr. Miracle, the Rorschach, Adam Strange or Strange Adventures, and even there's another one, the one with the army. Anyways, it doesn't matter. I want this to be oversized. I want this hardcover to be an oversized hardcover. I would love that. But no, I love this. This is, I mean, look, the mystery's over, guys. Yeah, the mystery's over. But if you're with it this long, I can't believe you wouldn't want to buy these last two issues, because he's going to die. And if he's going to somehow survive, I'd like to know how. But I suspect this is Tom King. Like you said, you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, great stuff. Great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to heal him, that would have happened. I mean, he went to the best minds of the. It kind of reminds me of when the original Captain Marvel died, right? Like the best minds work on it. There's just no way to save him. That's not the point of this series. The happy ending is not the point. It's almost the antithesis of the point. So, I said I was going to go back after Lazarus Planet, and I totally forgot. I'm going to go back right now, real fast, and talk about the previous books that you talked about before I got here.
Okay.
Batman One Bad Day, Catwoman from G. Willow Wilson. I thought it was okay. I certainly like the voice that G. Willow Wilson gives to Catwoman, and the art by Jamie McKelvey is just absolutely gorgeous. Like, oh man, what I wouldn't give for a Catwoman monthly series with Jamie McKelvey doing the art. That would be just fantastic. And again, love the voice that G. Willow Wilson gives Catwoman. My problem with the series is, so this is supposed to be, by the editorial prompt or whatever, like the quintessential books, stories of these characters, right? Like Killing Joke is for the Joker. This doesn't feel like that for Catwoman. It feels sort of incomplete, or it feels like even Catwoman herself isn't 100% sure who she herself is. So, if that's the case, it's like, well, then what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, why? What's the point of the story? Is it that Catwoman has changed so many times over the years? I don't know. And it's like, I still, despite all the different Catwoman stories, and maybe it's just because none of them have really spoken to me, I still feel like decades later, 80 years of Catwoman, we still haven't gotten the, character defining story of Catwoman, after 80 years. Maybe that's just a personal thing for me. But other than it not feeling like, okay, I'm going to read this story and know exactly who Catwoman is, the story itself is really fantastic and enjoyable. Tim Drake Robin 5, I really enjoyed this Moriarty, who seems like a good nemesis for Tim Drake. Really interesting. I could have done without seeing Tim Drake vomit, to be honest with you. I did really want the big bad, vomiting on the shark.
You should have heard me. You should have heard me rant about that. I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've ever seen a superhero win the day by puking on a bad guy. That's hilarious.
Runs out of acid, has to get it from his stomach. Whatever. I will say though, as interesting as this Moriarty character as a nemesis for Tim Drake seems, did you want it to be Bernard? I actually wanted the bad guy to just be Bernard. Bernard has been playing Tim Drake all this time, from the first time he came back into his life, and they had romantic relationship or whatever. All along it was Bernard, but no, it wasn't. I wanted that though. That would have been really interesting. And I'll just say the Riley Rosmo art. What is it about Rosmo's art that it's almost like as he settles into a character, his art gets almost cleaner.
He did share the artistic chores. He shared the art on this issue.
Gotcha.
He did. Half the issue was by I can't remember the name of the guy. I think it was Ortiz. It was Ortiz. I think is the other artist. Because
even the pages that he did. Oh yeah, Ricardo Lopez Ortiz. Yeah, but even the early pages are much cleaner. So pretty interesting there. DC Horror presents Sergeant Rock. I don't really have much to add. I'm sure you did a great job, but just fun. Zombie Hitler and Easy Company, blowing shit up and killing zombies. Just a lot of fun, as it's been throughout. Harley Quinn, really interesting. I think the art is the best thing about the issue. But I think this is a story that's going to pay off in the end with what Stephanie Phillips is setting up. But kudos, gets a little meta with Harley. Like, why do I need to be the hero? I'm not, she's never been that. So getting a little meta, talking about those of us that prefer her as a villain. So that was a solid issue. Sandman Universe, Dead Boy Detectives, again, solid. I don't have a lot of history with these characters, so I'm not that invested. But I'm a fan of Pornsak Pichachot, so interesting what's going on there, and I'm definitely invested to see how it all plays out. Best issue of Catwoman we've had so far. And really interesting how Tini Howard gets to tie it in with the Punchline series that's going on. And I'll talk about that in a second. But love seeing her in prison. I thought the art was absolutely fantastic. Far and away my favorite. It's almost like, and it's going to sound a little dichotomous, it's almost like if you take Selina, out of Gotham City, throw her in jail where she doesn't have all the other kind of baggage or plot lines or whatever, and you just give Tini Howard a chance to just focus on Selina to maybe find her voice a little better, that it's more true. It's not, it's not drowned out by some of the other things that are kind of cluttering up the page. We talked before when she was in Europe and what have you, how the pacing is the hardest thing for Tini to seem to get right, because there's so much story and it's jumping from one thing to another, and sometimes it feels choppy. And there's all these, she brought in so many characters right from the start. So eliminating that and just giving us a good focused story with her in jail is really working for me. And the Sami Basri art, again, just fantastic. So hopefully that continues. Detective Comics for me was meh. I'm having a real hard time with this story based on how out of continuity it feels. Jim Gordon's back as commissioner, apparently. I've talked in the past about the problems I have with retconning and putting this Asmir and this Orgum family into the origins of Gotham City. It's just not working for me. And so far, this entire story has felt more like a Two-Face story with Batman as a supporting character rather than a Batman story with Two-Face as a supporting character. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
Yeah.
getting kind of tired of Two-Face at this point. And then the backup story, man, I run hot and cold on this art from Danny. Sometimes it works for me. It's not working here.
Yeah, it's not
Um,
for me.
I'm following this idea of this kid who apparently now we learn is from the 1880s. We've had various stories of him from Simon Spurrier, but at the end of the day, it's just not that interesting. It's just not that interesting. I will say again, as I have 1,000 times, it feels like now, stop with the backups, knock a buck off the price, and just give us the main story.
Yeah.
Even if the main story is not.
I got to say, I was my comment was that I think I understand the gist, and I explain the gist in detail of the gist of the Two-Face side of the story, because I think that there's a interesting side there. I like the idea that Two-Face has two sides, and it's his duality of personality and his psychopathy that almost gives him an edge to overcome the effects of the Asmir that are affecting the Gotham homeless, and so that gives him the edge, and he ultimately ends up killing the Wolfman that's got one up on Batman. And I thought that was interesting enough. But the backup here and the way the music box and some of these other things, the backup here, I read it 3 times and I don't understand it. I'm not sure who the characters are. I don't understand exactly really what's going on. I don't understand the different lettering. I don't know how that's relevant. I don't. I did actually say that I wish you were here maybe to explain it to me if you understood it better, but I really didn't understand what Simon Spurrier was trying to say with this backup and how it really relates to the full story, it's such an artistic. I thought it was a jarring artistic difference, and it took me out of the main story when it should have been clarifying it. Because a backup should add clarification to the main story, sort of like the Toyman backup did in the Batman story with respect to the gun that was shot at Batman to put him into another alternate Earth of some kind. The backup actually provided some information that was helpful. I find these backups actually confuse me because I don't know. And it frustrates me. And again, I'll fall on my sword if I don't understand it, and other readers do that. That's fine. But I find myself jealous of other readers that understand what the hell's going on in this backup because I don't.
Well, you never understood. That's the thing. Like the previous backup was a Two-Face backup, but the backup before that was these two same characters, Jim Gordon and this kid that we found out was from the 1880s, and you had a hard time with that. So this is a continuation of that with another backup interrupting it. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. You're right about the art being jarringly different, and this is probably my least favorite Yvonne Reese art I've ever seen. Like it doesn't even look like his art because the inker is so heavy-handed and trying to make it dark and moody to capture this gothic feel of what Rom V is trying to do. So, I mean, I'm a fan of Rom V, don't get me wrong, but what he's doing here is it's just not working for me. I don't care that much about Two-Face. I don't want this Orgum family that we've never heard of before to be so intrinsically tied to Gotham because, well, then why haven't we heard of them before? Like it just doesn't make sense at the end of the day. So anyway, I mentioned Punchline before. Best issue of Punchline we've had so far. What wasn't working for me in Catwoman with all the different characters that I just talked about with Tinny Howard kind of making it tough for herself to give everybody enough space on the screen actually works really well for Punchline. You're bringing in all these different members of the classic members of Gotham crime family from Black Mask and Ventriloquist and this new Tiger Shark character and what have you. Maybe it's because it takes real estate away on the page from Punchline. I don't have to have as much Punchline to make an interesting story. Maybe that's why it works for me, but I'm really enjoying it. Far and away the best issue of the series that we've had so far. So I guess we'll see how it all plays out in the long run. But for me so far, it's without question excuse me, best issue that we've had so far, in the art solid too. Blue Beetle Graduation Day, introducing another Beetle to the DCU. I feel like are we heading down the Power Rangers path a little bit? That's kind of how it
I
feels.
did a whole diatribe about talking about Power Rangers, and yeah, because I figure there's at least five. We're going to get at least five because if you look at the members of the Horizon, that they show a scene from the Horizon who are the sort of like the peacekeepers, the peace faction of the Reach that eventually that the Tamaranians sort of like helped rescue from the Reach because the Tamaranians were at war with the Reach for a long time, and then a peaceful faction of the Reach called the Horizon are sworn enemies of the Reach. And when it showed pictures of them, they looked like there was an orange one, a purple one, a green one, and so. But yet the Reach also have their own scarabs, and so I'm wondering, are we going to end up with all the scarabs getting together like Power Rangers at the end of the day to win the day, and then one's going to betray the team, and we see this, we see it playing out, and I actually don't mind it, to be honest. The DC universe, I mean, it's ideally suited. It actually makes a lot of sense to have that with Blue Beetle with the Scarab, and I think that writer Joshua Trujillo, I think he's doing a reasonably good job. I'm not a big fan of the artistic of how Starfire is rendered in the comic artistically by the artist. I can't remember the name of the artist, but all in all, I find myself enjoying Blue Beetle.
Yeah, yeah. Surprisingly enough, it's solid. I think, yeah, what Josh Trujillo is doing a fantastic job melding that idea of keeping it fun and fresh with who Jaime Reyes is, but introducing some new ideas. So if you're a Power Ranger fan, you might dig it. If you're not, maybe less so. But at the end of the day, it is showcasing uh, how much of a hero Jaime Reyes is. And I love that Ted Kord stood up for him to Batman. That was great as well. Um, but how it all plays out in the long run, we're going to have to wait and see. But it's clear that Trujillo has a real passion for this character, and yeah, very dynamic art, very bright colors, which again, maybe that's what helps feed into the Power Ranger feel. But Adrian Gutierrez on art is fantastic, and yeah, who this guy is at the end with the white hair and the purple hood, who he might be, seems like Nemesis, seems like he
Yeah.
up to no good. We'll have to wait and see. So. All right, up next, Gotham Knights, Gilded City #4 from Evan Narcisse, writer, Abel's the artist, John is the colorist, and Steve Wan's on letters. We get quite a bit of Vandal Savage here, which is interesting. More of the Runaway, this 1880s Batman. This is the first time in reading this series that I felt like I'm reading a video game comic. And it
Uh,
sort of helped, right? Because, I just complained about inserting the Orgums into the history of Gotham City. Well, now we're introducing this Runaway into the history of Gotham City, and Batman feels very derivative of him. It makes Batman feel less interesting, less original. But I, throw that out. This is video game continuity, different universe, different part of the multiverse. Set everything aside. I don't play video games, so I don't know how much this ties into the story of, the narrative for Gilded City. But if this is the story, I imagine it's got to be fun to kind of play your way through. So, other than that, this is probably a story that's not really going to resonate with me, that I'm going to remember long term. But it's okay, and I think the art is really fantastic. I think Abel's art is especially good on the flashback. I almost find myself disappointed when I turn the page and it comes to modern time. We get like Batman and the Bat Family. It's like, I
Very
just
much
want to read
so.
about the Runaway
Yeah.
and the 1880s. That's more fun, and the coloring has kind of almost like a sepia tone. I'm just enjoying that more. Like, forget it. Just give me a story of the Runaway and forget the Batman part, and I think I'd like it even more. But all in all, it's a solid story. It's technically a well put together comic. The art is very solid. It's paced really well. So again, I think if you're a fan of the video game, you'll probably get a lot out of this and really enjoy it. So I will give DC credit for trying to do some um, cross promotion and bring in some new readers, maybe that love to play video games but don't necessarily read monthly comics, but might pick this up just because they love the Gilded City video game so much. So, what were your thoughts?
Uh, there's no question from a storytelling point of view. The past story of Gotham in 1847 with the Batman character called Runaway, who's a black character whose job is he runs away from bondage, cruelty, and injustice as he tells Vandal Savage. And the plot line is it flows so well in the past. Basically, Vandal Savage was a caveman who gained immortality when a meteor hit the ground, and the shard of the meteor bestowed upon Vandal Savage immortality. And it's the very shards from that meteorite that the Court of Owls are using to try to cheat death in 1847 Gotham City that flows with them to present day Gotham, which has to do with the golden iris virus, which is in the modern day coal mines that the Batman family is venturing into at the end of the issue. And I have to say, though, I'm like you. I want to give credit to writer Ivan Narcisse for scripting, doing very well on the scripting of the past, but he's done less of a good job drawing the connections from the past to the present. They're not really there. It's not really clear yet. This is the first issue, by the way, where Runaway actually explains who he is. I mean, this is the fourth issue, and we only got. I think we didn't even know who Runaway was. His name was indicated on the cover of issue 2. No clue in issue 1. Cover 3, they mention his name once. Finally, in issue 4 here, we get Runaway explaining who he is and what have you, and he uses his persona as another. As a citizen of Gotham to help investigate the Court of Owls for Vandal Savage. It's a decently written story, but I agree with you 100%. I hated every time it jumped forward to the modern day Gotham. I don't care about the modern day adventure, and yet ironically enough, what's odd is I don't play the video game either, but I'm thinking to myself, the people that play the video game, maybe they don't like the flashbacks to the past, but does the video game have this Runaway Batman character? Does the video game have flashbacks? I would almost hope it does, because from a storytelling point of view, if the best video games have the best stories, I'm thinking that this Runaway story is infinitely more exciting and interesting than the story we're giving in present day Gotham, which frankly is a little bit convoluted in my mind. It doesn't flow very well. I find myself wanting to go back in the past, in particular these characters, Portia Dauphin and Vivian Foxworthy, who are in fact a same-sex couple, both black and both abolitionists. This is an interesting story. They're not just former slaves, but they're also LGBTQ back in 1847 Gotham. There's all kinds of layers to the story in Gotham's past, and none of that really exists in the present story being told. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that you have to set aside that it's Gotham City, right? Because again, like I said, it can be problematic when you start thinking about, well, it's so derivative, right? Like, how is Batman original if there's Runaway character existed, way back when? So anyway, moving on to Action Comics number 1051, which DC is billing as the first of the Dawn of DC issues, according to the checklist and a few of the monthly issues. So there's 3 stories. And when I spoke with Philip Kennedy Johnson, he kind of made it clear he didn't want it to seem like this was an anthology, but they're kind of co-features. They all sort of, full amount of story, I guess you'd say. But the main story is called Speeding Bullets Part 1 from Philip Kennedy Johnson. Art is by Rafa Sandoval. Colors by Matt Herms. Letters by Dave Sharp. Encourage you all to go listen to my conversation with Philip. He dives deep into this issue and what the Superman family means for him, but harkens back to the Triangle era. That's the feel. That's why I really loved it. The Rafa Sandoval art was fantastic. Lex is the puppet master again, pulling strings, which to me suits Lex Luthor better than this idea of him throwing on the suit and being on the front lines. I think back to the John Byrne era where he was a businessman that, he was always 3, 4, 5 steps removed and you could never prove anything. That's, I think, when Lex is the most menacing and the most interesting. And what Philip Kennedy Johnson teased about Metallo, which I won't spoil it here, go listen to the interview, is just fantastic. I can't wait to see this leveled up Metallo. So I'm all in. This is far and away my favorite issue of Philip Kennedy Johnson. Well, I shouldn't say far and away, because last issue was fantastic as well, with the idea of Superman and his powers leveled up. And Philip talked a lot about that in our conversation as well. And this idea of a leveled up Superman, I can't wait to see what he can do. And if I said this during the interview to Philip, like if we have a leveled up Superman who's more powerful than maybe he's ever been post crisis, and Metallo is an actual threat to him, God, how much has Metallo leveled up as well? So yeah, I love this first story. I thought it was fantastic. What were your thoughts on it?
Uh, Philip Kennedy Johnson's done a really good job here because I got to be honest, I'm very cynical about the Superman family. I really don't like. I think part of me, I guess I'm old school, and it's really odd. You know, I got like what I consider to be very high grade copies of all the Superman family issues back from the early '80s, and I love them. They're comics. I got my reader copies when I was young, and I also bought copies that I preserved and bagged and boarded. And back when there was no bags and boards, I created my own. And anyways, I got stories I can tell about that. But in any event, I love the Superman family, but I had some trepidation here about this particular version of the Superman family, and I'm happy to report that this first issue, I'm blown away by the Sandoval art, absolutely fantastic. And I really like the way it showed the people. You know, there's an explosion, and it looks like there's a crisis, and all the people looking up into the sky, and all of a sudden we get this gorgeous image rendered by artist Rafael Sandoval, and it's reminiscent of Kingdom Come, where Superman's holding two criminals. It looks like that epic scene where Superman finally returns after 10 years. Well, this is Superman returning to Metropolis after Warworld, or at least that's the feel you get. Looks epic, but this time he's got the whole Superman family behind him. And it's different than Kingdom Come, of course, because it's not just Superman, it's everyone, it's all the members of the Superman family, and it looks really good. And where the moments really shine here is that I was worried that Philip Kennedy Johnson would have a hard time finding and capturing the voices of all the members of the Superman family. And I'm happy to report, at least in my opinion, that he nails the voices. He does just an amazing job. And in particular, what stood out for me was John Kent having some trepidation. You can tell already there's tension there because you got Lois and Clark adopting the Phalosian orphans from Warworld, and their names, I always butcher their names. I think their names are ridiculous, to be honest. But Othel Ra and Ethel Rue, or whatever the hell their names are, stupid names for the orphans. I mean, that's my one complaint. I mean, call them Lisa and Ted or Fred or something, but don't call them Ultra Rue and whatever. I don't really like that, but it is what it is. But it doesn't matter. They're adopted by Lois and Clark, and John Kent's not sure how he feels about it. So clearly they're right. They're going to have that conversation because they lost that childhood. They lost John Kent's childhood, and John Kent lost his parents for those years. He was raised by Ultraman, and the trauma that he experienced, that's going to be dealt with in Adventures of in another series written by Tom Taylor. It's very well done, and Superman looking forward to even the interplay with Lex Luthor. They're building the Steel, Natasha Irons and John Henry Irons. They're building a steelworks factory, a steelworks tower that's larger than Lex's tower. I mean, you got to think they're crazy. Why would they want to build a tower larger than Lex Luthor's tower? Because he's going to want to destroy it. And that's exactly what Lex Luthor tries to do through Metallo in the issue. And Metallo's characterization, we know that Lex Luthor he's blackmailing Metallo. We know that from previous issues and hints, and how that's going to interplay. And we know that quite frankly, things are headed to a huge. It's going to culminate in something here. Metallo he's got some insane power levels in this issue, and it ends with the Superman family is there, but it looks like Metallo can hold his own against all of them. So, but we know we have a Superman is more powerful now than he's ever been. So, in order to have somebody who can match with Superman, Metallo must have some pretty insane power levels. So I'm really curious to see how PKJ, the type of power he's given Metallo in future issues. But I quite enjoyed this first story. Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad I mentioned that to Philip about them saying, the new tallest building in Metropolis. That's just poking the bear, man. That's just going to piss Lex off. And sure
Yeah.
enough, the second story is a Lois and Clark story from Dan Jurgens, Lee Weeks on the art, Elizabeth Brightweiser does the colors, Rob Lee on letters. If you enjoyed the Lois and Clark series from Dan Jurgens before, you're going to love this. Picks up, I won't say right where that left off, but it definitely has that same feel. And just a reminder that Lee Weeks is one of the best artists that's working in comics. Like his storytelling is fantastic. I love this era of post crisis Superman, and I love that Dan Jurgens is back giving us a Superman story, and I'm real curious to see where it goes long term and who this new character that shows up at the end might be. This female character, absolutely no clue who she might be. So, what do you think of it?
Well, I enjoyed it well enough. I will give Dan Jurgens some credit here. But first, I want to admit to some confusion. The I what a curious time period to go back to, because when Superman was wearing the black tights with the silver, this was still technically, this was the Superman from Convergence, and the new 52 Superman was still flying around and was still alive, and then the new 52 Superman died, and then we had the Superman Reborn series where this Superman sort of became part of the continuity. It was kind of wonky, the continuity. So I'm a little bit, again, that's just me being really picky. I frankly don't care, because I just want to focus on the stories, and that's where we're getting. But then he's incorporating his 30th anniversary Doomsday story, which is good. Yeah, it adds some interesting element, because we had Doombreaker. There was a character by the name of Lloyd Creighton who ended up becoming transformed into Doombreaker by a shard of Doomsday's bones. And this issue involves young John Kent stealing the shard of the bone of Doomsday, the bones of Doomsday, because he wants to protect the world from it, because he feels he wants to. He's like his dad. He's young, and he doesn't realize how dangerous it is. But Batman, unbeknownst to Superman or even Batman, it's young John Kent that stole the Doomsday shard of the bone of Doomsday. And just before John Kent can do anything with it, he sees a meteor or a rocket crash outside the field of their home. It's odd that John Kent sees the crash, but his father doesn't. Lois and Clark don't, but this mysterious woman comes out, and she talks a foreign language, but there's a translation matrix that comes into effect, and it's really, it's interesting. So, I got the next issue teases that when death comes calling, and so it's like, wow, I'm really curious is who this character is. When I hear the phrase "death comes calling," I think of the Silver Banshee. So is this like a Silver Banshee character? Because every time she talks, her voice kills. So, anyways, I'm really curious to see what Dan Jurgens does with it. But I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, you're right about the whole continuity, the rebirth era of Superman. It gets really kind of wonky. Best to not think about it.
Yeah,
All I can think and wonder about this story this a way for DC to give fans of young John Kent, a chance to see him again?
yeah.
Because obviously there's quite a bit of young John Kent here. So, why go back to this era? Well, maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just a chance for readers to get some young John Kent. There's worse things than getting young John Kent. Um, so so the final story is from Leah Williams. It's the Power Girl story. Marguerite Sauvage rather gives us some beautiful art and colors. Letters by Becca Carey. This very much comes out of the Kryptonian or Krypton tie-in that we talked about last week for Lazarus Planet. The idea of Power Girl with mental powers, I'm kind of about. Wasn't a huge fan of her new costume either, but I do enjoy the voice that Leah Williams gives to Power Girl, and I'm learning to like this new Omen character. She seems pretty interesting. And also, there was no hints at any sort of romantic feelings between the two,
Yeah,
which I was happy
you're
about
right.
because yeah, you mentioned something about it. I'm like, did I miss that again? But yeah,
Maybe
we
that's just
didn't
my
have
that's my fanboy period fantasy that I got to get under control. Who knows?
yeah. So yeah, so I thought it's an interesting start. Like, is this how it's going to be for every story where it's basically going to be Kara or Karen rather, Karen Starr, and this Omen character, Power Girl and Omen, and each week somebody new comes in to get psychic therapy. This time being Beast Boy, and then the other thing I couldn't help but think was uh, about the Tim Sheridan run, and aren't what happened to Cyborg and Beast Boy being in one body, right? Are we just sweeping that under the rug? I'm fine if that's what we're doing, sweeping under the rug and forgetting all about it, and they're actually separate again, and we'll just pretend that didn't happen. I'm totally fine because I hated it to begin with, but every time I see Beast Boy, I'm like, is that really Beast Boy? Like he got shot in the face, so how did the cyborg part of it, come into play? Was it Cyborg got shot in the face? Whatever. Won't think about it too much, but anyway, I mean, love the art. The art is gorgeous, beautiful. The color work and the line work, just yeah, love it. So, what'd you think of this?
Well, I'm not a fan of Power Girl having telepathy. I really don't like it. I don't think I don't find it makes Karen Starr any more interesting. And why would you team Power Girl up with another telepath if you need a telepath in the DC universe? Why don't you go with the arson character, or the arse character that we got with Martian Manhunter? He seemed to have some sort of empathic abilities that were sort of telepath, related in terms of mind powers. I thought that was more interesting. Why not go with Omen? Why not have like I of all the character to mess with? Why mess with Power Girl? And plus, I'm also curious: does she even have her powers anymore? I don't even know. Is she just a telepath, or does she still have her superpowers?
I
I
got the
don't.
impression that she still had her superpowers, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but in any event, I thought it was really odd. What she does in this issue, she kind of cures Beast Boy has a genetic coding problem, and he's connected to the red, and his mind's all screwed up because he was shot in the head by Deathstroke, and Power Girl somehow goes into his mind and resets his coding, his genetic coding sequence. I mean, I know Karen Starr is in fact a genius. She's very intelligent. So I'm not saying she's not capable of doing that, but it just seems a very odd sort of power set for Power Girl to both have telepathy, and then suddenly I guess she's a scientist as well. And it just seemed really odd to me. I want to basically one of the variant covers. I want to show one of the variant covers of Action Comics 1051. It's a variant cover. The artist I think is Davika S. Davita or Davika. Anyways, it shows Power Girl in a dystopian future, hitchhiking on the road. She's wearing sunglasses. She's hitching a ride. It looks awesome. And I actually thought, because I saw the solicits for this, like over like a month ago, and I thought to myself, that's awesome. Whatever Power Girl's going to be doing in Action Comics, it's going to be involve her doing this, maybe going across country, maybe lost her power, something cool. You can imagine my disappointment when basically she's just relegated to basically just going inside the minds of Beast Boy or various people. Is this her job now? She's going to be like a glorified psychologist. I mean, is this who you think when you think of Power Girl? I want to be clear. Leigh Williams here, writer Leigh Williams, she captures the voice of Karen Starr good enough. But is this Karen Starr, or is this Kara Zor-El? Leigh Williams did an interview with CBR, and she states that she actually asked her editors. Leigh Williams, to her credit, actually read the different iterations of Power Girl. So because she did that, I know that she's familiar with her Kryptonian origins. She's the Earth 2 Supergirl. We know that she's familiar with the Atlantean origin, the different iterations of Power Girl, and she had a lot of questions because she admitted to being confused. She asked her editor a various question. Well, what about this or what about that? And the editors basically told Leigh Williams, well, just do whatever you want. What do you think the answer is? And so it bothers me a little bit that editorial. On the one hand, I get editorial saying to Leigh Williams, do what you want, because whatever, think outside the box. We're going to give you the creative freedom to do what you want. On the other hand, it's like, do you really not have any idea as an editor, as DC moving forward, what you want out of Power Girl? Because the whole telepathy thing seems really, really out of left field. And it's just not something, I mean, when you think of Power Girl, I think of Amanda Conner, Jimmy Palmiotti. Power Girl is aggressive. She generally she's aggressive first, thinks afterwards. And here she is on the opening page, meditating in a metaphysical space with Omen. Like, this is a calm Karen Starr. This isn't Karen Starr to me. Again, the dialogue's fine and all good. The art's beautiful. But this isn't Power Girl to me. It just is not Power Girl. So do I want this Power Girl iteration to continue? No. Do I like it? No. Is it beautifully drawn? Yes. I'm not saying that there can't be some decent stories out of it, but why not? If you want to tell a telepath story, well, then tell a story about Omen. Why make Karen Starr a telepath? I just find it's just a miss for me. And I don't mind the costume change. We still get her cleavage, which is important. She's a sexual character. You can't take away the sexual provocativeness of the character. It's part of who she is. And so I'm glad that we still have elements of that here, despite the minimized breast size by artist Marguerite Sauvage. She's still a pretty damn sexy character. So overall, I got mixed feelings.
Yeah, well, I would say that, it's only one issue so far. We did have, obviously, the part of the story in the previous anthology last week for Lazarus Planet, but it is only one issue so far. How long she'll have these psychic powers remains to be seen. Was it just for the duration of the Lazarus Planet event? So, just because she has those powers now doesn't mean she's always going to have them. So we'll have to wait and see how it all in the long run. So I give everybody the benefit of the doubt for now, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it's an interesting start. I'll say that. And Sergio Davila, or Davia, I think it's Davila because it's only one L, right, is the one that did that cover. And yeah, you're right. I mean, would I prefer, a dystopian story of Power Girl? Maybe that would be better. I don't know. This is interesting. I think it's interesting. So we'll see. All right, on to the last book we're going to talk about in detail, the Justice Society, issue number 2 from writer Jeff Johns. We have Mikel Janin, Jerry Ordway, and Scott Collins on art. Jordi Belair and John Kalis are the colorists, and Rob Lee on letters. Man, so much has happened in the story, especially been reading all along with Flashpoint Beyond and the various one-shots and tie-ins and previous things John's done since DC Rebirth. So a lot to unpack here. I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Well, look, we know that Per Degaton, the classic JSA villain, has been traveling through time and killing all the iterations of Dr. Fate. Every generation of Dr. Fate, from Kent Nilsson all the way to Khalid Nasser, all the way to the Dr. Fate of the 30th century, has essentially been killed by Per Degaton, and he's wiping out all the JSA members with respect to all the timelines. And there's only one little wrinkle that was thrown into things, and that was Catwoman, because Catwoman in the future, in 2039 or whatever, basically ends up saving her daughter, Helena Wayne, saving her life by throwing her the globe, that infamous globe that Batman had in Flashpoint, that was part of Flashpoint Beyond, and the globe that allows for whoever touches it to cross to time travel and potentially perhaps even go to alternate Earths. And when Selena Kyle threw the globe to Helena, she threw it just in time, just as Per Degaton was going to kill Helena, kill the Huntress. She was transported back to 1940 JSA, and she was rendered unconscious. The JSA, being the good people that they are, cared for her. Upon waking up, Helena meets the members of the Justice Society. It's in 1940, and she basically tells them, she basically gives them the rundown. She says, "I'm a member of the Justice Society in the future. My team was murdered. I was told her that Dr. Fate could help me save them because her mother told her, talk to Dr. Fate." But when the Dr. Fate of 1940, Kent Nelson, reads her mind, he gets transported 1 year in the future to 1941, where he meets his future sidekick, Salem. Now, that's a new sidekick for even diehard JSA fans. And so Salem talks to him. So he's a little bit disorientated by that experience. He ends up, Mr. Miracle shows up with Solomon Grundy. Dr. Fate gets then transported back through some machinations back to 1940. And then we get another time jump. So we're getting some time jumps here, where time jumps 10 years from our present, where Helena is basically with her mother Selena, and she's complaining about seeing that stranger, who we believe that redheaded stranger is Per Degaton, who ends up ultimately killing them. And then it shows Catwoman once again, where she's just about to attack Per Degaton, where she knowingly is sacrificing her life, but she manages to save her daughter, and she's got no problem sacrificing her life as long as she it gets her daughter to safety. And that's exactly what happens. And Helena gets sent all the way into the future this time, and to present day, where she ends up meeting members of the Justice League Dark, I guess, or I'm assuming Justice League Dark, but Deadman, Khalid Nasser, Dr. Fate, and Bibbo the detective chimp. And so there's, I don't know if there's a lot of explanations. This is still just set up as to Helena is all over time, literally all over time. There's a lot of time jumps here. It's a little bit wonky. My criticism is that Jeff Johns is usually, I would say, a little bit better than this. I'm excited because I'm familiar with DC Universe, and I'm along for these time jumps in the ride, and I'm not confused. But I question whether or not newer readers who just came on board at JSA #1, I wonder if maybe they're fully on board, if they're not as familiar with DC lore as maybe some of us are. But I really enjoyed it, and I think the art is fantastic, and the art by Mikel Janin is excellent. Jordi Belair on the colors, on really good job here. But what do you think?
Yeah, I want to be clear that these different eras are illustrated by different artists. So you have Mikel Janin doing sort of the Justice Society portions, and
Right.
then when you jump to Helena as a kid, it's Scott Collins, and then Jerry Ordway's doing the
JSA.
Kent when he
That's right.
pulled into the jumps to 1941 as opposed to the 1940 that Mikel Janin is doing. So I'm really enjoying this too. I think it's really fun and interesting. Can it be I don't want to say convoluted, but I suppose that's the right word, just because there's a lot of layers and complexity here, right? And if you have deep love and deep knowledge of DC, you're going to get more out than just jumping right in. But that being said, these are the kind of stories that I read when I was a kid, with a ton of characters, and you jump in midstream and there's action going on, and you can catch on, you can realize what's going on. I'm still like, okay, we finally get a name for the redheaded guy. It is Per Degaton, as we speculated, but then I was told it wasn't Per Degaton by somebody. So I mean, he's much thinner than Per Degaton. Per Degaton to me was always more of a physical character than kind of a puppet master or an intelligent, character that had all kinds of machinations and plans going on.
Yeah.
So is it really Per Degaton? Maybe it's just a different version of Per Degaton. I guess we'll wait and see. But I'm really enjoying this. I can't wait to see where it goes. I love the voice he's giving this version of Helena Wayne, Huntress. So it's Jeff Johns at his best in my mind. So
Yeah. Oh, good story.
all right. Well, I think we talked about everything, right? There weren't any other.
Yeah, that covered it all. We got it all.
Yeah, there weren't any other single issues that were like out of continuity or whatever. Sometimes we don't always talk about that stuff. So those are all the books, 14 titles out this week. Again, apologies that I was a little bit late. There are some, excuse me, there are some collections out from DC this week as well. So let me give you guys a rundown on those real fast. In addition to these single issues that we talked about, We've got change over to just DC. We have the Black Adam, the Justice Files trade paperback with a rock cover of all things. I'm not sure how relevant that is. There's also a Dark Knight's Metal Omnibus hardcover, a couple different versions of that. One has a black and white pencil cover, one has a regular cover. And then there's an Earth Prime trade paperback, which reprints and collects all those one-shots, those Earth Prime one-shots, which are basically DC stories that were set in the world of the DC TV shows. So we didn't read any of that, and Rocky and I neither one of us are really big fans of the CW TV shows. So, but if you're curious, if you're a fan of those and you want to get them all collected in a trade, they're out there. They're out there this week for you to check out. So, well, that's going to do it for this episode.
Well, your pick of the week. I want to know your pick of the week. I'm going to say my pick of the week. For my pick of the week, I'm going to be going with. Oh, pardon me, that's the wrong one. My pick of the week is Action Comics, which is
1051.
Yes, 1051. Even though I didn't like the Power Girl story, the strength of PKJ and Dan Jurgens overcame that for me. And the Power Girl story wasn't, it just wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't badly written or anything like that. I'm just not a fan of the telepathy angle. So I'm going to go with Action Comics.
Yeah, so that probably would have been my pick, but I was about to say, why don't you go first? Because if you pick that, then it opens me up to pick something else. And there's definitely some worthy titles, right? Like obviously we both really enjoyed Human Target this week. But man, I think I have to go with Justice Society. As good as Catwoman was, I thought Robin was really solid. Punchline was really good. Yeah, but I'm going to go with Human Target was so good. But no, I'm going to go with Justice Society. It's really intriguing what Jeff Johns is building, and he's got me really interested. Like if I could only keep reading one of these books, it would be Action Comics. But if I could read two, the second one would be Justice Society. So yeah, that's my pick. Anything you got coming up that you want to tease for the listeners?
Well, I just did a review of Area 51, a Helix Project, issue 5, and I want to give a shout out to Trevor Lankevich, his Kickstarter there for issues for the final issue 6, and collecting all. You can get all 6 issues for one complete story of Area 51, a Helix Project. It's a really good story. I know it'll read very good as a trade, and reading all the issues from front to back, it's one pretty darn good story, and so definitely check out that. And check out my review of Area 51 Helix Project, and it'll take you links to the Kickstarter and support that project. And probably the rest of the week I'm tied up in trials and what have you, so I won't be doing anything at least until the weekend. But what about yourself?
Yeah, I just had that fantastic interview that we've referenced multiple times with Philip Kennedy Johnson. I encourage everybody to check that out. I should have some more interviews coming up later this week. Just a matter of getting them scheduled. So as always, be sure that you head over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! You know what to do from there. Subscribe, ring the notification bell, like this video, leave comments. We get some really interesting and cool conversations going there sometimes, so you can take part in that. Conversely, if you always check us out on YouTube and you want to be sure not to miss any of the audio only content that we do for the Comic Source, just go to wherever you get your podcasts, do a search for the Comic Source, and we'll go from there. So all right, and until next time, Comic Boom out, and bye from the Comic Source. Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.